Hello friends. Did you know nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy these stories, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps. Thank you for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The name's Jedediah. Been driving these Midwest highways for 27 years now, and I've seen just about everything you can imagine happening on these roads. Accidents that'd turn your stomach, weather that'd make you question your sanity for being out there, and people, Lord, the people you meet can be worse than any blizzard or black ice you'll ever face. But what happened to me last October at that way station outside Fort Wayne, Indiana, that's something I still can't shake. It's the reason I switched my routes, changed my schedule, and why I won't drive through Indiana after dark anymore. Not if I can help it. I was hauling a load of automotive parts from Detroit down to Louisville. Standard run, nothing special about it. My employer had me on a tight deadline though, the kind where you're counting every minute at every stop. The weather was decent for October, just some light drizzle that started around dusk as I crossed into Indiana on I-69. Now, any trucker will tell you that way stations are just part of the job. You pull in, get your weight checked, show your paperwork if they ask, and move on. Most of the time, you're in and out in 5 minutes. Sometimes they wave you through without even stopping. It's routine, boring even. That's what I expected when I saw the lights of the Fortville way station coming up. It was around 9:30 p.m. when I pulled in. The station looked normal enough. Couple of trucks ahead of me, the usual harsh fluorescent lights making everything look washed out and tired. I noticed right away, though, that something was different. Usually you've got 1, maybe 2 officers working the late shift. That night, I counted at least 4 vehicles parked outside the main building. I rolled onto the scale and waited. The light stayed red longer than usual. Through my side mirror, I could see an officer walking around my trailer with a flashlight, even though the area was well lit. That wasn't standard procedure, not for a pre-pass approved truck like mine. Finally, the speaker crackled to life. "Driver, pull forward to inspection bay 3. Bay 3. That made my stomach tighten a bit. Bay 3 meant a full inspection, and I knew my rig was clean. My logs were perfect, my load was secure. All my lights worked. I'd just had a full DOT inspection 2 weeks prior. But you don't argue. You just do what they tell you. I pulled into the bay and killed the engine. Through my windshield, I could see Officer Hezekiah approaching. I knew him by reputation. Most drivers who ran this route did. Hezekiah had been working these way stations for at least 15 years. He was the kind of officer who seemed to enjoy making drivers sweat, always finding something minor to write up. But he was also known for being by the book, never crossing any real lines. He walked up to my door with that slow, deliberate stride that cops perfect over the years. I rolled down my window before he had to knock. "Evening, officer." "License, registration, and logs," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. His face looked different than I remembered from previous encounters. Harder, somehow, like he hadn't slept in days. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he kept glancing back toward the main building. I handed over my documents. Everything was electronic now, but I kept paper copies just in case. He studied them longer than necessary, flipping through pages he'd already looked at, checking dates that were clearly visible. "You running solo?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Always do." "Where's this load heading?" "Louisville. Ford Distribution Center." He nodded slowly, still looking at my paperwork. Then he leaned in closer to my window. I could smell coffee on his breath, and something else, whiskey maybe, though I couldn't be sure. "Listen," he said, his voice dropping low. "You seem like a smart man, The fact that he used my first name caught me off guard. These inspections were always formal, always professional. Officer this, driver that. I like to think so, I replied carefully. He glanced around again, then back at me. Smart men know when to help themselves out of difficult situations. I felt the air in the cab grow thick. This wasn't heading anywhere good. I'm not following you, officer. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Your load manifest says automotive parts, but manifest can be wrong sometimes. Sometimes trucks carry things that aren't listed, things that might cause problems if they were discovered. My manifest is accurate. You're welcome to inspect. I'm going to inspect, he cut me off. That's not in question. What I'm trying to explain to you is that inspections can go different ways. They can be quick and painless, or they can take hours. They can find problems that aren't really problems, or they can find nothing at all. I knew exactly what he was suggesting, but I wasn't about to take the bait. Officer, if there's something specific you're looking for, what I'm looking for, he said, leaning even closer, is cooperation. See, we've had some issues with trucks running this route. Contraband, you understand. My supervisor's breathing down my neck to increase citations, increase inspections. It's a real hassle for everyone involved. He paused, letting that sink in. Now, a cooperative driver might make a small contribution to the officer's benevolent fund, say $500. That driver might find his inspection goes very smoothly. He might even get pre-pass approval for the next 6 months, no questions asked. There it was. Straight-up bribery, bold as brass. In 27 years, I'd heard stories about this kind of thing, but I'd never experienced it myself. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. Officer Hezekiah, I said, keeping my voice steady, I don't carry that kind of cash. There's an ATM inside, he replied quickly, like he'd been expecting that response. Very convenient. I looked him straight in the eye. I'm not comfortable with that. His expression changed instantly. The fake friendliness vanished, replaced by something cold and mean. You're not comfortable, he repeated slowly. Well, let me tell you what's going to happen now. I'm going to inspect every inch of your rig. I'm going to find violations, because there are always violations if you look hard enough. Your electronic logs, I bet there's some discrepancies there. Your load securement? Probably not up to standard. Hell, I haven't even checked your medical certificate expiration date yet. He stepped back from the door. Get out of the truck and bring your logs, all of them. The inspection office is inside. This is going to take a while. I climbed down from the cab, my mind racing. I could report this, but to whom? His supervisor, who he'd mentioned? The same one, supposedly pushing for more citations. And it would be my word against his, no witnesses, no recording. The walk to the inspection office felt like a mile. The drizzle had turned into steady rain, and the parking lot lights created yellow halos in the mist. I noticed a woman standing near the edge of the lot, just beyond the fence. She was watching us. Had been the whole time, maybe. Even from that distance, I could tell something was off about her. She stood too still, like she was waiting for something. Inside the office, Hezekiah made good on his threat. He went through every page of my logs with a magnifying glass, literally. He found a discrepancy in my duty status from 3 days ago. Claimed I'd marked myself off duty 2 minutes before I actually stopped, according to the GPS data. It was the kind of technical violation that most officers would ignore, but he wrote it up. Then he found another issue with my load securement. Said one of my straps was showing signs of wear. It wasn't, but he took photos from angles that made it look worse than it was. Another citation. This went on for 3 hours. 3 hours of manufactured violations, each one accompanied by a reminder that this could have been avoided. The whole time I kept thinking about that woman outside, wondering if she was part of this somehow. It was past midnight when he finally finished. 7 citations total, enough points to threaten my CDL if they all stuck. He handed me the paperwork with that same cold smile. "You can contest these, of course," he said. "Court date's in 6 weeks. You'll need to come back to Indiana, take time off work. Probably want to hire a lawyer, too. That gets expensive." He let that hang in the air for a moment. "Or," he continued, "you could reconsider my earlier suggestion. I could void these citations right now. Clerical error, you understand. Happens sometimes." I looked at the citations. Fighting them would cost me more than $500 in lost wages alone, not counting legal fees. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the principle. And more than that, it was about the feeling in my gut that told me this went deeper than just one corrupt officer. "I'll take my chances in court," I said. His face darkened. "You're making a mistake, Jedediah. A big mistake. Maybe, but it's mine to make." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. Then he picked up his radio. "Unit 12, this is Hezekiah. I've got a driver here refusing inspection compliance. Jedediah Walker, CDL number." He rattled off my license number. "Blue Peterbilt, Illinois plates. Make a note for all stations." My blood ran cold. He was putting me on some kind of watch list. "Every way station from here to Louisville is going to know your name now," he said, after setting down the radio. "Every officer is going to want to take a real close look at your rig. You think this was bad? You haven't seen anything yet." I gathered up my citations and headed for the door. "Oh, and Jedediah," he called after me. "That woman outside, near the fence, her name's Mahala. She's been waiting to talk to you." I stopped, but didn't turn around. She's got quite a story about drivers who don't cooperate. You might want to hear it. Might change your mind about things. I walked out of that inspection office with my citations clutched in my hand and rain soaking through my jacket. My truck sat there in Bay 3, looking like a faithful dog waiting for its owner. But I couldn't leave yet. Not with what Hezekiah had said about every way station knowing my name. And not without finding out what this Mahala woman wanted. She was still there, standing in the same spot beyond the fence. The rain didn't seem to bother her. She wore a long dark raincoat that went down to her knees and her hair was pulled back tight. As I approached, I could see she was older than I'd first thought. Maybe mid-50s, with the kind of face that had seen hard times and came out the other side different. "You're Jedediah," she said. It wasn't a question. "How do you know my name?" "I heard it over the radio. Hezekiah's got a voice that carries." She glanced toward the inspection office. "You turned him down." Not much of a secret, apparently. She stepped closer to the fence. Up close, I could see her eyes were bloodshot, like she'd been crying or hadn't slept in days. Maybe both. "My husband was a trucker," she said. "Ran this same route for 15 years. Name was Samuel, though everyone called him Big Sam. Maybe you heard of him?" The name didn't ring any bells, but I shook my head politely. "He died 14 months ago," she continued. "Right here in Indiana. Single vehicle accident, they said. Drove his rig off an overpass at 3 in the morning. No skid marks, no mechanical failure, no medical condition. Just drove straight off like he meant to do it." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, meaning it. We'd all known drivers who didn't make it home. "Don't be sorry, be smart." Her voice turned hard. "Sam was a good driver. Perfect record for 15 years. Then one night he gets pulled into this very way station. Comes home the next day, white as a sheet, won't tell me what happened. Just kept saying we needed to move, needed to get out of Indiana." She pulled her coat tighter against the rain. 2 weeks later, he's dead. But before he died, he'd been getting pulled over constantly. Every weigh station, every inspection point. They'd find violations that weren't there, write citations for things that didn't exist. He fought them at first, spent thousands on lawyers. Then something changed. He stopped fighting, started taking different routes, driving at odd hours, trying to avoid the stations. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying that Officer Hezekiah and his friends have a system. You either pay, or they make your life hell. And sometimes, when drivers know too much or fight too hard, accidents happen. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation if I can't prove it, she said bitterly. I've tried, talked to investigators, filed complaints, even hired a private detective. But nothing sticks. The officers all back each other up. The reports all look clean. And anyone who might have talked is either too scared or... She trailed off. Or what? Or they're dead. 3 drivers in the last 2 years. All had problems with Hezekiah. All died in single-vehicle accidents. No witnesses, no evidence of foul play. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper, pushed it through the fence. That's a list of names, she said. Drivers who've had run-ins with Hezekiah. Some paid him off and won't talk about it. Others fought back and faced consequences. A few are still fighting. You might want to reach out to them, compare notes. I took the paper, but didn't unfold it yet. Why are you telling me this? Because I've been watching this station for months, waiting for someone else to stand up to him. Most just pay. You didn't. That makes you either brave or stupid, and right now, I don't care which. I just need someone who's willing to fight. A horn honked from the station. Another truck was pulling in for inspection. I should go, I said. Wait. She grabbed the fence with both hands. They're going to follow you. Not obviously, but they'll know where you are. Every mile you drive in Indiana, someone will be watching. They've got friends at truck stops, rest areas, even some repair shops. Your citations are just the beginning. So what do you suggest I do? Document everything. Get a dash cam that records inside and out. Keep copies of all your paperwork. And whatever you do, don't stop at any isolated rest areas in Indiana. They like to have random inspections at those places, usually when no one else is around. She started to walk away, then turned back. One more thing. Hezekiah mentioned the Officers' Benevolent Fund. That money doesn't go to any fund. It goes into their pockets. They've been running this scheme for at least 5 years, maybe longer. Sam estimated they were pulling in $50,000 a month from drivers too scared or too rushed to fight back. $50,000 a month. That was serious money. Enough to kill for, maybe. I got back in my truck and fired up the engine. As I pulled out of the inspection bay, I saw Hezekiah standing in the doorway of the office, watching me go. He gave me a mock salute, and I could see him saying something into his radio. The rest of the drive to Louisville was tense. Every time I saw headlights in my mirror, I wondered if I was being followed. Every weigh station I passed, and thankfully they were all closed, made my hands grip the wheel tighter. I kept thinking about what Mahala had said about her husband driving off that overpass. I made it to Louisville without incident, delivered my load, and thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I got a call from my dispatcher. There had been a complaint filed against me. Apparently, Officer Hezekiah had reported that I was verbally aggressive during the inspection and had made threats. Complete fabrication, but it was his word against mine. My company had to launch an internal investigation. That meant I was benched until it was resolved. 3 days of lost wages. That was just the start. When I finally got back on the road, I made sure to avoid Indiana completely, even if it meant adding hours to my routes. But you can't always control where dispatch sends you. 2 weeks after the incident at the way station, I had to pick up a load in Fort Wayne. No way around it. I planned my route carefully. I'd drive through Ohio, cut across the northeast corner of Indiana, grab my load, and get out. I'd time it so I'd hit the way stations during shift changes when they'd be more likely to wave trucks through. I had my dash cams rolling, my paperwork perfect, my rig inspected by our company mechanic and documented. None of it mattered. 30 miles into Indiana, I got pulled over. Not at a way station, just a regular traffic stop. The state trooper said I'd been weaving. I hadn't been. The dash cam would prove that. But he wanted to do a full roadside inspection anyway. He found a marker light that was too dim and wrote me a citation. An hour later, I finally made it to Fort Wayne. The shipper kept me waiting 6 hours to load. They said there was a delay with the paperwork. I'd never waited more than 2 hours at that facility before. While I sat there, I noticed a state police cruiser parked across the street, just sitting there. When I finally got loaded and back on the road, I decided to take a different route out of Indiana. I'd go south through Fort Wayne, pick up US 24, and cut west into Illinois. It would add 90 miles, but it would avoid the main inspection stations. That's when things got really bad. US 24 is a decent road during the day, but at night, it's got long stretches of nothing. No lights, no buildings, just farmland and forest. I was about 20 miles west of Fort Wayne when I saw the lights in my mirror. Police lights, but moving slow, keeping pace about a quarter mile back. I maintained my speed, exactly the limit. The cruiser maintained its distance. This went on for 10 miles. Then, just as I was approaching a particularly dark stretch of road, the cruiser suddenly accelerated, flew past me, and disappeared into the darkness ahead. 5 minutes later, I saw why. There was a roadblock. 3 police cars, lights flashing, officers with flashlights directing traffic to the shoulder. But here's the thing, I was the only vehicle on the road. This roadblock was for me. I pulled over, hands visible on the wheel. An officer approached, but it wasn't just any officer. It was Hezekiah. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was a way station inspector, not a state trooper. But there he was, in a different uniform, walking up to my door with that same cold smile. "Jedediah," he said. "We meet again. Heard you've been having some trouble on our roads." "Just doing my job, officer." "Funny thing about jobs," he said, shining his flashlight into my cab. "Sometimes they become more trouble than they're worth. Sometimes it's better to find a new line of work, or maybe a new state to work in." He walked around my truck slowly, his flashlight playing over every surface. "I'm going to need you to open your trailer," he said. "You need probable cause for that." He laughed. "Probable cause? I've got a tip that this truck is carrying contraband. Anonymous, but credible. That's all the cause I need." I knew it was pointless to argue. I climbed down and opened the trailer. It was exactly as it had been loaded. Automotive parts, shrink-wrapped and palletized. But Hezekiah climbed up into the trailer with a box cutter. "Need to inspect the cargo," he said, and started slicing open boxes. "You can't. I can, and I will, unless you'd like to reconsider our previous conversation. The offer's gone up, though. 1,000 now. Inflation, you understand." I stood there watching him destroy my cargo, knowing that every damaged box would be a claim against my company, another mark on my record. But I also knew that paying him would never end it. It would just be the beginning. "No," I said. He stopped cutting and looked at me. "No, do what you're going to do. But I'm not paying." He climbed down from the trailer, his face red with anger. You know what happened to the last driver who said no to me this many times. He got close enough that I could feel his breath. Single vehicle accident, drove right off an overpass. Tragic, really. Good driver, too, just like you. That's when I knew Mahala had been right about everything. Are you threatening me, Officer Hezekiah? He stepped back, hands up in mock innocence. Threatening? No. Just observing that driving these roads can be dangerous, especially when you're tired, especially when you're distracted by all these citations and complaints. Accidents happen all the time. He walked back to his cruiser, then turned one more time. Drive safe, Jedediah. Would hate for something to happen to you. Oh, and that damaged cargo? That's going to be a problem. Might want to call your company, let them know you'll be delayed. We're going to need to document every single box. It took 4 more hours. 4 hours of standing on the side of a dark highway while they photographed every box he'd cut open, wrote reports, made phone calls. By the time they finally let me go, it was past 3 a.m. I was exhausted, angry, and starting to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Real fear. I made it to a truck stop just across the Illinois border as the sun was coming up. My hands were still shaking when I parked. I'd been checking my mirrors every few seconds for the last 50 miles, expecting to see those police lights again. But I was alone, finally. The first thing I did was call my dispatcher and explain the situation with the damaged cargo. He wasn't happy, but he'd been in the business long enough to know when something didn't smell right. He told me to document everything and get the load delivered as is, let the lawyers sort out the liability later. Then I called Mahala. Her number was on that paper she'd given me, along with the other names. "You made it out," she said instead of hello. She sounded relieved. "Barely. Hezekiah showed up at a roadblock, cut open my cargo. That's escalation. He's getting desperate. You've got him worried." "Worried? He threatened to kill me." "No," she corrected. "He threatened that you might have an accident. There's a difference, legally speaking. He's too smart to make direct threats that could be proven." I told her about the 4-hour delay, the damaged cargo, the way he'd mentioned her husband. "Sam's accident was at 3:47 a.m., she said quietly, "on a stretch of I-69 about 40 miles south of where you were stopped. Empty road, good weather, no reason for it. The investigators said he probably fell asleep at the wheel. But you don't believe that. Sam had just stopped for coffee 20 minutes before. The receipt was still in his cab, full cup still in the holder, barely touched. Does that sound like someone who was falling asleep?" I thought about my own state. Exhausted, but wide awake with adrenaline. "What do you think happened?" "I think someone ran him off the road. I think they knew exactly when he'd be on that stretch of highway. Exactly how tired he'd be after hours of harassment. Exactly how to make it look like an accident." She paused, and I could hear her taking a deep breath. "Jedediah, I need to tell you something else. You're not the first driver I've approached. I've talked to 6 others over the past year. 3 of them paid Hezekiah after I talked to them, decided it wasn't worth the risk. 2 stopped running routes through Indiana entirely. The 6th one, a driver named Mitchell Brooks, he was going to help me. He was collecting evidence, recording conversations, building a case. What happened to him? Heart attack. 38 years old. No history of heart problems. Died in his truck at a rest area near Indianapolis. The autopsy found nothing suspicious, but his dash cam and phone were missing. His wife said he'd been getting death threats for weeks, but the police said there was no evidence of foul play. I felt my chest tighten. This was bigger than just one corrupt cop running a bribery scheme. How many are involved? At least 4 officers that I know of. Hezekiah is the main one, but he's got partners. They rotate shifts, cover different stations, share information, and they've got people outside the force too. Mechanics who will find problems that aren't there, dispatchers who'll delay your loads, even some drivers who act as spotters. So, what do? I can't keep losing money on damaged cargo and citations. You need to make them think you're backing down while you gather evidence. Play along just enough to reduce the pressure, but don't pay them. And whatever you do, don't travel alone through Indiana for a while. I don't have a choice. My route's find another driver to convoy with. Safety in numbers. And Jedediah, start recording everything. Every conversation, every stop, every interaction. It might be the only thing that keeps you alive. After I hung up, I sat in that truck stop for another hour, thinking. I'd been driving solo my whole career, liked it that way. But Mahala was right. Continuing alone was asking for trouble. I made some calls, found another driver named Carl who was heading to Louisville later that week. We agreed to convoy, stay in radio contact the whole way. It felt like admitting defeat, but it was better than ending up like Sam. That week, I also took Mahala's advice about recording. I installed interior dash cams, got a pocket recorder, even started keeping detailed logs of everything beyond the required DOT logs. Time, date, location, and description of every interaction. The convoy run with Carl went smoothly. Too smoothly. We didn't get pulled over once, didn't even get called into the way stations, just got waved through. It was like they wanted me to think the pressure was off. But I knew better. This was the calm before something worse. 2 weeks passed. I managed to avoid Indiana for most of it. But then dispatch hit me with a load that couldn't be refused. High priority, triple rate, straight through Indiana to Chicago. The kind of load that if you turn down, you don't get offered the good runs anymore. I tried to find another convoy partner, but everyone was booked. I'd have to run it solo. I planned everything meticulously. I'd drive straight through, no stops except for fuel. I'd hit the way stations during peak hours when they'd be too busy for games. I had my recorders running, my phone fully charged, and I'd given Mahala my exact route and timeline. The first sign of trouble came at the fuel stop in Fort Wayne. I always used the same station, had for years. Good prices, clean facilities, safe location. But when I pulled in, the owner, a guy named Frank, who I'd known for a decade, wouldn't look me in the eye. "Pumps are down," he said when I walked in to prepay. I looked outside. Another trucker was fueling up just fine. "Frank, what's going on?" He glanced around nervously, then leaned over the counter. "I can't serve you, Jed. I'm sorry. They told me if I fuel your truck, I lose my commercial license. My whole business. I got a family." "Who told you?" But he just shook his head and walked into the back office. I had to drive another 30 miles to find a station that would serve me. By then, I was running behind schedule, which meant I'd hit the way station at exactly the wrong time. Shift change, when Hezekiah would be coming on duty. Sure enough, as I approached the Fortville station, I saw his cruiser in the lot. But I also saw something else. Mahala's car parked across the street in a closed business lot. She was watching. I pulled onto the scales and immediately got directed to Inspection Bay 3. Same bay as before. But this time, when Hezekiah approached, he wasn't alone. There were 2 other officers with him, and one of them was holding a drug-sniffing dog. "Mr. Walker," Hezekiah said, formal now that others were present. "We've received information that your vehicle may be carrying illegal substances. That's impossible. We'll let the dog determine that." They ran the dog around my entire rig, had it jump up into the cab, even into the sleeper compartment. Of course, it found nothing because there was nothing to find. But then one of the other officers, young guy, nervous looking, pulled something from his pocket while pretending to check under my passenger seat. "Got something here," he announced. holding up a small plastic bag. My blood went cold. They were planting evidence. "That's not mine," I said immediately, my recorder running in my pocket. "We'll have to process this," Hezekiah said, barely concealing his satisfaction. "You'll need to come with us." That's when everything went sideways. Mahala must have been recording from across the street because suddenly her car alarm started going off, loud, piercing, drawing attention. A moment later, 2 more trucks pulled into the station, and I recognized them. They were drivers from that list Mahala had given me, guys who'd been harassed by Hezekiah before. One of them, an older driver named Tom, got out with his phone, clearly recording. "Officer Hezekiah," he called out. "Is there a problem here? This is a police matter. Move along." "I don't think so. See, we've been documenting your harassment of drivers for months now, and we just saw your colleague there plant something in this man's truck." The young officer went pale. He looked at Hezekiah, then at the bag in his hand. "I didn't," he started to say. "Shut up," Hezekiah snapped at him. Then he turned to Tom. "You're interfering with an investigation." "No, we're witnessing it. Big difference. And we're going to keep witnessing it until this driver is released without charges." More trucks were pulling in now. Word had spread somehow. Maybe Mahala had called them. Maybe they'd been monitoring CB chatter. Within minutes, there were 8 trucks in that way station, all with drivers standing outside, all with phones recording. Hezekiah's hand moved to his weapon. "Everyone needs to disperse now." "Or what?" Tom asked. "You going to arrest all of us? Shoot us? In front of all these cameras?" The tension was incredible. I could see Hezekiah calculating, trying to figure out how to salvage this. The young officer still held the planted bag, looking like he wanted to disappear. Then we heard sirens. Not police sirens, news van sirens. Somehow, a local news crew had been alerted. They pulled up just outside the station, and a reporter with a cameraman jumped out. Hezekiah made a decision. He grabbed the bag from the young officer and shoved it in his own pocket. "False alarm," he announced loudly. "No contraband found. Drivers free to go." He leaned close to me as I passed, whispered so only I could hear, "This isn't over. You just made it personal." I got back in my truck and pulled out, the other drivers following like an escort. We convoyed all the way to the Illinois border. Didn't stop once. When we finally pulled into a truck stop across the state line, Tom came over to my cab. "We've all been where you are," he said. "Hezekiah's been pulling this crap for years. But this is the first time we've stood together. Mahala's been organizing us, getting us to share information, coordinate. Why now? Because of you. You're the first one in a long time who didn't just pay up or run away. You stood your ground, even when it cost you. That gave the rest of us courage." He handed me a business card. "There's a lawyer in Indianapolis who's been building a case. With what happened today, with all the recordings, we might finally have enough to take to the feds. Real investigators, not local cops who are in on it." That night, I stayed at the truck stop and made a decision. I was done running, done being afraid. If Hezekiah wanted to make it personal, then I'd make it legal. I called the lawyer, set up a meeting, then I called Mahala. "You saw what happened," I said. "I saw everything. Recorded it too. The planting of evidence, the intimidation, all of it. Is it enough? Combined with what the others have, maybe. But Jedediah, you need to know something. Hezekiah's not going to let this go. He can't afford to. If this comes out, he's not just losing his job, he's going to prison. Him and everyone involved. So what's he going to do? Whatever it takes to stop us. And right now, you're the face of the resistance. That makes you the biggest target." I thought about Sam, about Mitchell Brooks, about all the drivers who'd been hurt or killed for crossing Hezekiah. "Let him come," I said. "I'm done being afraid." But I should have been afraid. I should have been terrified, because what happened next made everything else look like child's play. The meeting with the lawyer was set for the following Tuesday in Indianapolis. His name was Robert Sterling, and according to Tom, he'd been investigating corruption in Indiana's transportation enforcement for 3 years. He had files, testimonies, financial records, everything except the smoking gun that would make federal prosecutors take notice. I drove to Indianapolis with 2 other trucks as escort. We'd learned not to travel alone anymore, especially for something this important. The meeting was at 2 p.m., but I arrived in the city that morning, parked at a well-lit truck stop with security cameras everywhere. That's where I found the note. It was tucked under my windshield wiper, folded once. No envelope, no identifying marks. Just a single paragraph in block letters. "You have 24 hours to withdraw your complaint and leave Indiana forever. If you meet with that lawyer, if you testify, if you continue this crusade, you will not leave this state alive. This is not a threat. This is a guarantee." Your friend Mahala received the same warning. Ask her what happened to her husband when he ignored it. I called Mahala immediately. "Did you get a note?" I asked. "Found it this morning on my kitchen table," she said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear fear underneath. "They were in my house, Jedediah. While I was sleeping, they were in my house. We need to call the police." "Which police? The ones who work with Hezekiah? The ones who've been covering for him? We're on our own until we get to the feds." She was right, but that didn't make it easier to swallow. "Are you still going to the meeting?" I asked. "Are you?" "Yes." "Then I'll see you there." The lawyer's office was in a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed legitimate business. I felt out of place in my truck driver clothes, but Sterling didn't seem to notice or care. He was all business. Sharp suit, sharper mind, and eyes that had seen too much corruption to be surprised by anything. Mahala was already there, along with Tom and 3 other drivers I recognized from the way station incident. Sterling had us all sit around a conference table while he pulled up files on a large screen. "What you've all experienced," he began, "is part of a much larger operation. Officer Hezekiah is just one piece. Our investigation has identified at least 12 officers across 4 way stations involved in this extortion ring. Conservative estimate? They're pulling in over $2 million a year from drivers." He clicked through financial records, showing suspicious deposits, property purchases that didn't match salaries, a clear pattern of enrichment. "But here's the problem," he continued. "Everything I have is circumstantial. The victims are mostly too scared to testify. The few who would testify don't have hard evidence, and the ones who had evidence have a tendency to have accidents." He pulled up 3 photographs. I recognized one, Mitchell Brooks. These 3 drivers all filed formal complaints in the last 2 years. All 3 died within 6 months of filing. Brooks had a heart attack. David Chen drove into a bridge abutment. Marcus Washington's truck exploded, supposedly a fuel system malfunction. "They were murdered," Mahala said flatly. "Probably. But proving it is another matter. That's why what happened at the way station yesterday is so important. Multiple witnesses, multiple recordings, clear evidence of attempted evidence planting. It's enough to get federal attention." He turned to me. "Mr. Walker, you're the key witness. The evidence was planted in your truck. You've documented everything. Your testimony could break this whole thing open." "What about protection?" Tom asked. "You've just shown us 3 dead drivers. What's to stop Jedediah from being the 4th? Once we file with the federal prosecutor tomorrow, you'll all be under federal protection. FBI will take over the investigation. Hezekiah and his crew won't dare move against federal witnesses. And until tomorrow? I asked. Stay together. Stay in public places. Document everything. Don't give them an opportunity. We spent the next 4 hours going through everything. Every incident, every threat, every piece of evidence. Sterling recorded it all, had us sign affidavits, built an airtight package for the feds. By the time we finished, it was dark outside. I'm filing first thing in the morning, Sterling said. By noon tomorrow, this will be in federal hands. Just make it through tonight. We left as a group, but once we got to the parking garage, we had to split up to get to our vehicles. Mahala's car was on level 2. Mine and Tom's trucks were parked on the street. We agreed to meet at a hotel near the airport, stay together for the night. I never made it to the hotel. My truck was where I'd left it, but something was off. The driver's side door was slightly ajar, not obviously just enough that I noticed, because I always made sure it was locked tight. I approached carefully, used my phone's flashlight to check inside before opening it wider. Everything looked normal. Too normal. My logbook was exactly where I'd left it, my coffee cup in the same position, my jacket hanging on the same hook, but the air freshener hanging from my mirror was turned backwards. A tiny detail, but wrong. I climbed in carefully, started the engine. Everything sounded fine. Checked my gauges, all normal, but that paranoid voice in my head wouldn't shut up. I put the truck in gear and started to pull out. That's when I saw him in my mirror. Hezekiah, standing on the sidewalk about 50 feet behind my truck, just watching. He wasn't in uniform, just jeans and a dark jacket, but it was definitely him. He raised his hand, made a gun gesture with his fingers, then smiled. I pulled out into traffic, kept checking my mirrors. He didn't follow, just stood there watching until I turned the corner. My hands were shaking on the wheel. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. I made it about 3 miles before I figured out what. The brakes felt soft. Not failed, just soft, like they were working at maybe 70%. On a loaded truck doing city speeds, that wasn't immediately dangerous. But I was about to get on I-465, the loop around Indianapolis. Highway speeds, heavy traffic, and compromised brakes were a deadly combination. I pulled over immediately, called Tom. My brakes have been tampered with. Where are you? I gave him my location. Don't move, I'm 10 minutes away. We'll get you to a shop. While I waited, I called Sterling and told him what happened. Document everything, he said. Take photos. Get a mechanic to write up what they find. This is attempted murder, and we can prove it. Tom arrived with another driver, and they followed me at slow speed to a 24-hour truck repair shop. The mechanic, a guy named Luis who'd been working on rigs for 30 years, put it up on the lift and whistled low. Brake lines have been punctured, he said. Tiny holes, probably made with an awl or ice pick, designed to leak slowly. You'd lose pressure gradually over maybe an hour of driving. By the time you realized you had no brakes, you'd be at highway speed. Would I have crashed? Luis looked at me seriously. Best case? You'd have managed to gear down and engine brake to a stop. Worst case, and more likely, you'd have plowed into traffic at 70 miles per hour. Either you'd have killed yourself, or you'd have killed others and faced manslaughter charges. Either way, I'd have been eliminated as a witness. Luis documented everything, took photos, wrote up a detailed report. Tom and the other driver stayed with me while the repairs were made. It took 3 hours and cost me $800, but by 11 p.m., my truck was safe to drive. We convoyed to the hotel, parked our trucks where we could see them from our rooms, and set up a watch schedule. Nobody slept well that night. The next morning, we were at Sterling's office when he made the call to the federal prosecutor. Within an hour, 2 FBI agents arrived to take preliminary statements. By noon, they'd officially opened an investigation. Hezekiah and the others will be notified that they're under federal investigation, one of the agents told us. Any action against witnesses will be prosecuted as federal crimes. You're safe now. I wanted to believe him, but I'd learned that men like Hezekiah didn't just give up when cornered. They got desperate. And desperate men do terrible things. The investigation moved fast. Within a week, the FBI had seized records from 4 weigh stations, frozen bank accounts, and interviewed dozens of drivers. The evidence was overwhelming. Hezekiah and 6 other officers were arrested on federal corruption charges, but they made bail. All of them. Sterling said not to worry, that they wouldn't dare do anything while under federal indictment. But I kept thinking about those 3 dead drivers, about Sam's car going off that overpass, about my punctured brake lines. 2 weeks after the arrests, I was running a load from Chicago to Memphis, avoiding Indiana entirely, even though it meant adding 200 miles. I'd stopped at a truck stop in Missouri for fuel when my phone rang. It was Mahala. They're all going to take plea deals, she said. Sterling just called, Hezekiah and the others. They're pleading guilty to lesser charges. 2 years in minimum security, maybe less with good behavior. That's not enough. No, it's not. But it's something. And Jedediah, there's more. Part of the deal is that they have to admit to everything, including what they did to Sam and the others. They're admitting to murder? Not murder. Conspiracy to intimidate witnesses. The prosecutor says proving murder is too hard, but this way, at least there's justice of some kind. Some kind of justice. It felt hollow. What are you going to do now? I asked. Keep fighting. There's a civil suit, wrongful death. The FBI says there might be federal witness intimidation charges later. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what they did. Every trucker, every news outlet, everyone. We talked for a few more minutes, then I got back on the road. It was late, past midnight, and I was tired. The highway was empty, except for a few other trucks. Their lights cutting through the darkness. I had the radio on low, some talk show discussing the corruption scandal in Indiana. They mentioned my name, called me the whistleblower who broke it open. That's when I saw the headlights in my mirror. A car coming up fast. Too fast. It moved into the left lane like it was going to pass, but when it got alongside my cab, it matched my speed. I glanced over and my blood froze. It was Hezekiah. He was out on bail. Wasn't supposed to leave Indiana. Definitely wasn't supposed to be anywhere near me. But there he was, driving parallel to my truck, staring at me through his passenger window. He held something up, a photograph. Even at highway speed, I could see what it was, a picture of my daughter who lived in Nashville, who I was heading to visit after my delivery. Then he accelerated, pulled in front of me, and took the next exit. I called 911, reported the violation of his bail conditions, the implicit threat. The highway patrol said they'd look for him, but we all knew he'd be long gone. I called Sterling, the FBI, even Mahala. Everyone said the same thing. Document it, report it, be careful. But how do you be careful against someone who's already lost everything and has nothing left to lose? I changed my route, didn't visit my daughter, went straight back to Chicago. I installed more cameras, varied my schedule, never stopped at the same place twice. But I knew it was just a matter of time. Men like Hezekiah don't forget. They don't forgive. They wait. The call came 3 months later. Hezekiah had been found dead in his cell. apparent suicide. The official report said he'd hung himself with a bedsheet, left a note confessing to everything, the murders, the extortion, all of it. Case closed, justice served. But I knew better. You see, Tom had called me the night before Hezekiah died, said he'd gotten word from another driver, someone who knew a guard at the prison. Hezekiah had been talking, trying to make another deal. He was ready to name names, not just the officers involved, but the people above them, the ones who really ran things. And then he was dead. Sterling said it was over, that we'd won. The corruption ring was broken, the bad cops were in prison or dead, the roads were safe again. But I still check my mirrors constantly. I still inspect my truck before every trip. I still avoid Indiana when I can. Because here's what I learned from all of this. The corruption we exposed was just one layer. There are always more layers, always bigger fish, always someone willing to kill to keep their secrets. We'd won a battle, but the war never really ends. Mahala still calls sometimes. She's remarried now, moved to Florida, found some peace. But she told me something during our last conversation that stuck with me. You know what Sam wrote in his final log entry? She said, the night before he died? He wrote, "The road knows the truth." I never understood what he meant until now. I think about that sometimes when I'm driving these empty highways at night. The road does know the truth. It knows who lived and who died, who fought and who gave up, who paid the price for justice. And if you listen carefully on quiet nights, when you're alone with nothing but your headlights cutting through the darkness, you can almost hear it whispering the names of the drivers who didn't make it home. Hezekiah is dead. Most of his crew is in prison. But every time I pass a way station, every time I see those lights in my mirror, every time an officer approaches my cab, I remember that night at the Fortville station. I remember the fear, the anger, the moment I decided not to pay. Some nights, I wonder if I made the right choice. Then I think about all the drivers who came after me, who don't have to face what I faced, who can run these roads without fear of extortion. Yeah, I made the right choice. But God help me, I paid for it. We all did. And somewhere out there on some dark stretch of highway, another driver is probably facing the same decision right now. I just hope they're stronger than the ones who came before. I just hope the road remembers their name too. Because in the end, that's all we've got out here. Our names, our choices, and the long, dark road ahead. My name's Eliphalet, and if that sounds like something out of the Old Testament, you can blame my grandmother. She had a thing for biblical names that nobody could pronounce right on the first try. Most folks just call me Eli, but the name on my CDL, the name on 34 years of manifests and delivery confirmations, that's Eliphalet. And after what happened in Michigan last winter, it's a name that certain people won't ever forget. I've been an owner-operator since 1990. Bought my first rig with borrowed money and more ambition than sense. Paid it off running loads nobody else wanted to touch. Detroit to Chicago in blizzards. Cleveland to Indianapolis through ice storms. The kind of runs that pay well because they're dangerous, and I needed every penny. These days, I own my truck free and clear. Pick my loads, set my schedule. Or at least I did before I stumbled into something that nearly cost me everything. It was February 2024, and I was running a regular route hauling auto parts from a supplier in Grand Rapids down to a distribution center in Fort Wayne. I'd been making the same run twice a week for 3 years. Same highways, same stops, same everything. When you do a route that many times, you notice when things change. New construction, closed rest areas, different staff at the truck stops. You develop a rhythm, a pattern, and anything that breaks that pattern stands out. That's why I noticed the fuel discrepancies. It started small, I'd fuel up at a truck stop near Battle Creek that I'd been using for years. Full tanks, usually around 240 gallons, at whatever the posted price was. But when I'd check my fuel gauges 50 miles down the road, I'd be showing less than I should. Not much, maybe 5 or 10 gallons, but enough to notice if you're paying attention. At first, I figured it was a gauge problem. Old trucks do weird things sometimes. But I started keeping detailed records. Exact gallons purchased, exact mileage, fuel consumption calculations. I've always been a numbers guy, liked the precision of it. After 2 weeks of documentation, the pattern was clear. I was losing fuel, but only when I stopped at certain stations. The Battle Creek stop was the worst. I'd fuel up with 240 gallons, but by my calculations I was only getting maybe 220. 20 gallons at current diesel prices? That's nearly $100 per fill-up just disappearing. Over a month, that added up to serious money. I tried talking to the station manager, a woman named Cordelia who'd been running the place for as long as I'd been stopping there. She was one of those people who seemed to know every trucker by name, always had a smile and a weather report ready. Professional, efficient, trustworthy. Or so I'd thought. "Cordelia, I think there's something wrong with Pump 7, I told her, one morning after another short fill. I'm not getting the gallons I'm paying for." She looked concerned, made a show of writing it down in a notebook. "I'll have it checked right away, Eli. Thanks for letting me know. Can't have problems with our pumps." But nothing changed. I kept losing fuel, kept paying for gallons I wasn't getting. So I decided to run a test. I brought my own measuring container, a certified 5-gallon can, and decided to verify the pump's accuracy myself. It was early morning, still dark, and I thought I was being subtle about it. I pulled the nozzle, filled my can while watching the meter. It showed 5.0 gallons exactly, but my can was only about 3/4 full. The pump was rigged, showing more gallons than it was actually dispensing. But that wasn't even the interesting part. While I was doing this, I noticed something else. There was a second truck parked on the other side of the pump island, but its driver wasn't fueling. He was just sitting there watching me. When I made eye contact, he quickly looked away and started talking on his phone. Within 30 seconds, Cordelia came walking out of the station, moving faster than I'd ever seen her move. "Eli, what are you doing out here?" she asked, her voice different from usual. Harder. Nervous. "Just checking something," I said, holding up my can. "Pump's showing 5 gallons, but this can's not full." Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise. Fear. Then something that looked like resignation. "Come inside," she said. "We need to talk." I followed her in, but I kept my hand on my phone in my pocket, ready to dial 911 if needed. She led me to the back office, closed the door, and sat down heavily in her chair. "You need to stop what you're doing," she said without preamble. "Right now. Fill your truck and leave, and don't come back." "Excuse me?" "You heard me. For your own safety, stop asking questions, stop testing pumps, and find somewhere else to fuel." "You're stealing from drivers," I said. "Skimming fuel, charging for gallons you're not delivering." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think I'm the one stealing?" "Eli, I'm just trying to keep my business. The people who are really stealing, you don't want to meet them." "What are you talking about?" She looked at the door, then back at me, and seemed to make a decision. 6 months ago, a man came to see me. Called himself Alpheus. Said he represented a group of investors who were interested in the fuel business, but they weren't interested in buying my station. They were interested in, let's call it a partnership. She pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands. I'd never seen her smoke before. They installed modified pumps, high-tech stuff, all computerized. To the inspectors, everything looks perfect. But the pumps can be controlled remotely. They skim a percentage from every transaction. But the fuel doesn't just disappear. It gets diverted. Diverted where? Underground tanks. Secondary tanks installed beneath the main ones. Every night, trucks come and pump out the stolen fuel. They sell it on the black market for pure profit. No taxes, no overhead, just free money. How many stations? Every independent truck stop from Detroit to Fort Wayne. Maybe 40, 50 locations. The ones that didn't agree to the partnership, they had accidents. Fires, contamination in their tanks, health code violations that came out of nowhere. One owner in Kalamazoo, he fought back hard. His station burned down while he was inside doing inventory. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just theft. This was organized crime. Why are you telling me this? Because I like you, Eli. You've been a good customer for years. And because if you keep poking around, they're going to notice. And when they notice someone, that someone tends to have problems. I could go to the police. She laughed again. That same bitter sound. With what proof? You think they didn't plan for that? Every transaction looks legitimate on paper. The computers show the correct amounts. It's only during the actual pumping that the diversion happens, and that's controlled remotely. Even I don't have access to the real controls. She stubbed out her cigarette and stood up. Look, I'm telling you this as a favor. Take it and go. Find a corporate station to fuel it. Flying J loves places too big for them to infiltrate. And forget we ever had this conversation. I left, but I didn't forget. I couldn't. Every time I calculated my fuel costs, every time I saw other drivers fueling at those rigged pumps, losing money they probably couldn't afford to lose, it ate at me. But what really got to me was the scale of it. 40 or 50 stations, skimming from hundreds of trucks every day. We were talking about millions of gallons of stolen fuel, millions of dollars stolen from drivers who were already operating on thin margins. I started keeping detailed records of every station I suspected was involved. I varied my routes, made excuses to stop at different locations, always buying just enough fuel to test the pumps without being obvious about it. Within 3 weeks, I had a list of 27 stations showing the same discrepancies. I also started noticing patterns. The trucks that came at night to collect the stolen fuel, they were always the same type, unmarked tankers with specific permit numbers. The drivers all wore the same company uniforms, but the company name was never visible. They arrived between 2 and 4 a.m., always when the stations were nearly empty. I should have left it alone. Should have just found clean stations and protected myself. But there was something about the systematic nature of it, the predatory targeting of independent truckers, that made me angry. We were already getting squeezed by regulations, by fuel prices, by competition. Now we were being robbed by the very people we trusted to provide fair service. That's when I made my first real mistake. I decided to follow one of those collection trucks. It was a Tuesday night in early March. I'd parked at a rest area near the Battle Creek station, watching through binoculars. Sure enough, at 2:47 a.m., an unmarked tanker pulled in. I watched them connect hoses to something behind the station, not the normal fill ports, but something else, hidden behind a maintenance shed. 20 minutes later, they were done and pulling out. I waited until they were on the highway, then followed at a distance. They took I-94 east toward Detroit, then exited near Romulus. I stayed far enough back that they wouldn't notice, but close enough not to lose them in the industrial area they entered. They pulled into a warehouse complex near the airport. High fences, security cameras, the works. I parked on a side street and watched as they unloaded. There were other tankers there too, at least 6 that I could see. This wasn't just a fuel theft ring. It was a major operation. I took photos with my phone, zooming in on license plates, building numbers, anything that might be useful. I was so focused on documenting everything that I didn't notice the car pulling up behind me until the tap on my window made me jump. 2 men stood outside my truck. One was tall and thin, wearing an expensive-looking suit despite the late hour. The other was shorter, broader, and had the kind of face that suggested he solved problems with his fists. The tall one smiled when I rolled down my window. "Eliphalet, right?" he said. "That's an unusual name. Biblical. Means God is deliverance, if I remember correctly. Can I help you?" "Actually, we were hoping to help you. You seem to be lost. This isn't a safe area for truckers to park, especially ones who are curious about things that don't concern them. I'm just taking a break. DOT regulations." His smile widened. "Of course, safety first. But you know what's not safe? Following vehicles in the middle of the night, taking photos of private property, asking questions at truck stops about things that hardworking business owners would rather not discuss." My mouth went dry. They knew. They'd known the whole time. "I'm Alpheus," he said. "I believe Cordelia mentioned me, and you've been causing some concern among my associates. I haven't done anything illegal." "Neither have we," he replied smoothly. "Everything we do is perfectly legal. Documented, licensed, legitimate. But you know what is illegal? Stalking, harassment, trespassing. All things that a concerned business owner might report to the police about a troublesome trucker." The shorter man shifted slightly, just enough to let me see the gun in his waistband. "But we're not unreasonable people," Alpheus continued. "We understand curiosity. We even admire initiative, which is why we're prepared to make you an offer. I'm not interested. You haven't heard it yet. We need drivers. Legitimate drivers with clean records who can move our product without raising suspicions. The pay is excellent, double what you're making now. All you have to do is haul what we tell you, when we tell you, and forget about what you've seen. And if I say no," he shrugged, "then you go back to your regular routes, your regular stops. But you'll find that things become difficult. Inspections that find violations, delays at way stations, problems with your insurance, issues with your CDL renewal. Administrative harassment is so hard to prove, but so effective at ruining a small business. You're threatening me. I'm explaining reality to you. You've seen something you shouldn't have seen. Now you have 2 choices: profit from it or suffer from it. There is no third option where you walk away unchanged." I looked at both of them, calculating my chances if things went bad. They weren't good. "I need time to think." "You have 24 hours, Alpheus said. "Tomorrow night, same time, be at the Cordelia's station. We'll have a truck ready for you to haul. If you're not there, we'll assume you've chosen the difficult path." They walked back to their car and drove away, leaving me sitting there with my hands shaking. I'd stumbled into something much bigger and more dangerous than I'd imagined. These weren't just fuel thieves. They were organized, connected, and ruthless. I drove back to my usual truck stop in Indiana, a corporate place where I knew I was safe, and spent the rest of the night thinking. I could take their offer, become part of the problem. I could refuse and watch them destroy my business, my livelihood. Or I could fight back, but not alone and not stupidly. I made 3 phone calls that morning. The first was to a friend who worked for the FBI in Detroit, someone I'd known since high school. The second was to a lawyer who specialized in RICO cases. The third was to Cordelia. "They approached me," I told her. "Alpheus and his friend. And I need information. Everything you know about their operation, locations, schedules, names. Are you insane? Do you know what they'll do if... They're going to destroy me anyway if I don't play along. At least this way I might be able to stop them. There was a long pause. I can't, she finally said. I have a family, kids in college. I can't risk it. They killed that owner in Kalamazoo. How long before they decide you know too much? How long before you become a liability? Another pause, longer this time. There's a diner off exit 84, she said. The old one that looks abandoned but isn't. Meet me there at noon. Come alone, and for God's sake, make sure you're not followed. The diner was exactly as Cordelia described. A relic from the 1960s that looked like it should have been condemned years ago. Paint peeling off the walls. Half the neon sign burnt out. Parking lot full of cracks and weeds. But there were 3 trucks parked outside, and smoke coming from the chimney. Places like this survived because truckers knew they could get a real meal cheap, and nobody asked questions. I circled the lot twice before parking, checking for any vehicles that might have followed me. I'd driven 40 miles out of my way, doubled back twice, and stopped at 2 different truck stops to make sure I was clean. Maybe I was being paranoid, but Alpheus had known my name, known what I'd been doing. These people had eyes everywhere. Cordelia was in a back booth, facing the door. She looked older than she had just a few days ago, stress etched into every line of her face. There was a cup of coffee in front of her, untouched and cold. I slid into the booth across from her. The waitress, a woman who looked like she'd been working there since the place opened, brought me coffee without asking. That's the kind of place it was. You look terrible, I told Cordelia. Thanks, you don't look so great yourself. She glanced around nervously. Did anyone follow you? No, I made sure. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope, slid it across the table. Everything I know is in there. Locations, schedules, names when I have them. Financial records showing the modifications to my station, the installation of the secondary tanks. Contact information for other station owners who are in the same situation. I picked up the envelope, felt its weight. Why now? What changed? They killed someone else. Yesterday, a driver named Marcus who was asking too many questions at a station in Lansing. Official story is he had a heart attack, but the owner called me, terrified. Said Marcus was healthy as a horse, then suddenly dropped dead right after confronting them about the fuel discrepancies. Jesus. That could have been you, Eli, still could be. She leaned forward. You need to understand something. This isn't just about fuel theft. That's just one piece of their operation. They're moving drugs in those tankers too, hidden compartments in the baffles. They're laundering money through the truck stops. They've got cops on the payroll, inspectors, probably politicians. You're not fighting a gang, you're fighting a cartel. I thought about my friend at the FBI, wondered if even federal intervention would be enough. Who's behind it? Who's really running this? I don't know. Alpheus is middle management, maybe upper middle. But there are people above him, people with enough money and power to set up an operation this big. Some say it connects all the way to Detroit mob families. Others think it's international, Eastern European syndicates using the trucking industry to move product across the country. She stood up abruptly. I've told you everything I know. After today, we never met. If anyone asks, I don't know you beyond being a regular customer. And Eli, whatever you're planning, be careful. These people don't give second chances. She left without looking back. I sat there for another 20 minutes, reading through the documents she'd given me. The scale was staggering. Based on her estimates, they were stealing close to 100,000 gallons of fuel per day across all locations. At current prices, That was nearly $500,000 daily. Add in the drug trafficking and money laundering, and we were talking about a multi-billion-dollar operation. I met my FBI contact that evening at a rest stop near Toledo. Jake Morrison had been my friend since we were kids in Grand Rapids, back before he became a federal agent and I became a trucker. He looked at the documents Cordelia had provided, whistled low. "This is big, Eli. Really big. If even half of this is accurate, we're talking about a major RICO case. So you'll investigate? It's not that simple. We need more than documents. We need proof of the actual crimes happening, recorded conversations, financial transactions we can track, and most importantly, we need someone on the inside." I knew where this was going. They want me to haul for them, offered me a job. Jake's eyes lit up. "That's perfect. You could—" "No. Hell no. I'm not becoming a federal informant. Eli, you're already in this. They know who you are. They've threatened you. The only way out is through. You help us build a case, we protect you and take them down. And if they figure out I'm wearing a wire, you saw what happened to Marcus. We'll be careful. Latest tech, completely undetectable. And we'll have agents watching you, ready to move if anything goes wrong." I wanted to say no, wanted to just walk away and pretend none of this had happened. But I kept thinking about all the drivers getting robbed, about Marcus dropping dead for asking questions, about the cancer this organization was spreading through the trucking industry. "If I do this," I said slowly, "I want guarantees. Witness protection if needed, my business protected, and immunity from any crimes I might have to commit while undercover." "Done. I'll have the paperwork drawn up tonight." 24 hours. That's how long I had to completely change my life from independent trucker to federal informant. Jake and his team worked fast. They fitted my truck with hidden cameras and microphones, gave me a panic button that would bring in cavalry if I needed it, and coached me on what to say and what to look for. The next night, I pulled into Cordelia's station at exactly 2 a.m. The place was almost empty, just one other truck at the far end of the lot. Alpheus was waiting, leaning against a black Cadillac like he had all the time in the world. "Eliphalit," he said, as I climbed down from my cab. "I was hoping you'd make the smart choice." "I need money," I said, playing the role Jake and I had rehearsed. "Business has been slow, bills are piling up. If you're paying what you say you're paying, I'm in." He smiled. "A practical man. I respect that. The job is simple. You'll haul regular loads during the day, maintain your legitimate business. But 3 nights a week, you'll pick up special trailers from our warehouse. Drive them where we tell you, no questions asked, no looking inside. Each run pays $5,000 cash, $15,000 a week for 3 runs. It was more than I made in a month doing legitimate hauls." "What's in the trailers?" "That's the no questions asked part. Could be fuel, could be farming equipment, could be unicorns. Doesn't matter. Your job is to hook up and drive." A second man emerged from the shadows, the same broad-shouldered enforcer from the night they'd confronted me. He was carrying a bag, which he handed to Alpheus. "A sign of good faith," Alpheus said, opening the bag to show stacks of $100 bills. $10,000 up front. Consider it a signing bonus. Your first run is tomorrow night. Be at the warehouse at midnight. The address is in the bag." I took the money, trying to look grateful rather than sick. This money was evidence now, marked bills that would help build the federal case. "One more thing," Alpheus said as I turned to go. "We'll be installing some equipment in your truck. GPS tracker, communication system, few other things. For coordination purposes. That's not necessary. It's not a request." His friendly demeanor vanished for a moment. "You work for us now. That means we need to know where you are, what you're doing. The equipment gets installed tonight. Leave your truck here with the keys. It'll be ready by morning. This was a problem. If they went through my truck thoroughly, they might find the FBI surveillance equipment. I had to think fast. I need my personal stuff out first. Medications, documents, clothes. He waved dismissively. 5 minutes. I climbed into my cab, grabbed my official gear, and hit the panic button Jake had given me. It sent a silent alert that meant compromised but not in immediate danger. They'd have to remove their equipment before Alpheus's people found it. I spent a sleepless night in the truck stop's driver lounge, wondering what modifications they were making to my rig. When I went out at dawn, my truck looked the same, but I could see new wiring under the dash, a new antenna on the roof, and what looked like a kill switch near the ignition. They could probably disable my truck remotely now if I tried to run. I called Jake from a burner phone as soon as I was clear of the truck stop. "They swept your whole cab," he said. "Good thing we pulled our gear. We'll have to rely on personal recording devices now. Check under your seat. I left you a new phone. Looks like a regular smartphone, but has encrypted recording capability." For the next week, I maintained my regular runs during the day, trying to act normal despite knowing I was being tracked. Other truckers at various stops treated me differently, some with suspicion, others with a kind of wary respect. Word had gotten out that I was working for Alpheus now. I was one of them. My first special run came that Thursday night. I arrived at the warehouse at midnight as instructed. The place was buzzing with activity despite the hour. Forklifts moving pallets, trucks coming and going, men with clipboards directing traffic. It looked like any legitimate logistics operation except for the armed guards and the fact that everyone stopped what they were doing to watch me arrive. A man I didn't recognize directed me to Bay 7, where a trailer was waiting. It was a standard 53-footer, unmarked, sealed with a heavy padlock and tamper-evident tape. I backed up to it, connected the airlines and electrical, did my standard pre-trip inspection. The trailer was heavy, close to maximum weight, but the weight distribution felt wrong. Too much weight in specific spots rather than evenly distributed. "Where am I taking this?" I asked the supervisor. He handed me a sealed envelope. "Instructions are inside. Don't open it until you're on the highway. Follow them exactly. No stops except for fuel and only at approved locations listed in the instructions. You have 8 hours to make delivery." I pulled out of the warehouse and drove for 10 miles before opening the envelope. The destination was a warehouse in Cincinnati, specifically a neighborhood I knew was mostly industrial and empty at night. The approved fuel stops were all stations I recognized from Cordelia's list, the ones that were part of the network. I called Jake using the encrypted phone. "I'm en route with the first load, Cincinnati destination." I gave him the address. "We'll have surveillance there. Just make the delivery and get out. Don't try to see what's in the trailer." The drive was uneventful, but tense. Every set of headlights in my mirrors made me nervous. Every way station I passed, all conveniently closed, felt like a threat. The modified equipment in my cab included a radio system that crackled to life periodically with coded messages I didn't understand. "Blue Dog is moving. Clear at checkpoint 3. Weather looks good ahead." I realized I was part of a convoy, even though I couldn't see the other vehicles. They had spotters ahead and behind, probably watching for cops or rival operations. This was military-level coordination. I made Cincinnati in 6 hours, pulled into the designated warehouse as the sun was coming up. More armed guards, more suspicious looks. They had me drop the trailer in a specific spot, then handed me another envelope. My payment. "Next run is Saturday," the supervisor said. "Same time, same pickup location. Don't be late." I drove back to Michigan, feeling dirty despite not knowing what I'd hauled. Could have been stolen fuel, could have been drugs, could have been weapons. Whatever it was, I was now complicit in it. Over the next 3 weeks, I made 9 runs: Cincinnati, Louisville, St. Louis, Indianapolis. Always at night, always sealed trailers, always cash payments. The FBI was building their case, tracking the shipments, identifying the players. But they needed more. They needed to know what was in those trailers. That's when Jake proposed something that made my blood run cold. "We need you to look inside one of the trailers." "Are you insane? They'll kill me if they catch me breaking the seal." "We've got a plan. There's going to be a staged inspection. State police will pull you over, insist on checking the trailer for a routine agricultural inspection. You'll resist, but eventually comply. It'll look like you had no choice. And if there are drugs in there, I get arrested, we'll handle it. The cops are ours. They'll document what's inside, reseal it with identical tape we've prepared, and send you on your way. The whole thing will take 10 minutes. I didn't like it, but I was in too deep to back out now. The next run was scheduled for Tuesday night, destination Nashville. Jake said they'd intercept me near the Kentucky border. Tuesday came too fast. I picked up the trailer, heavier than usual, and headed south. The coded radio chatter seemed more intense than normal. Weather station reports possible storm activity. Reroute Blue Dog through alternate 7. Something had them spooked. I was passing through Louisville when my regular phone rang. It was Cordelia. "Eli, get out. Get out now. They know." "What? How?" "Someone leaked. They know about the FBI, about you. They're going to—" The line went dead. I immediately called Jake, but it went to voicemail. Then I noticed headlights in my mirror coming up fast. 2 vehicles, moving in formation. I pushed harder on the accelerator, but a loaded truck can only go so fast. The vehicles split, one pulling alongside, one staying behind. The radio in my cab crackled. "Pull over at the next exit." Alpheus's voice calm but cold. "We need to talk." I hit the panic button, sending my location to the FBI. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I kept driving. "Eliphalet, don't make this worse. Pull over now." The vehicle beside me swerved toward my truck, trying to force me toward the shoulder. I held my line, but I knew I couldn't outrun them. That's when I saw the 18-wheeler ahead, one of those hazmat tankers with all the warning placards. An idea formed, probably stupid, definitely dangerous. I grabbed the CB radio, switched to channel 19, the Universal Trucker channel. "Breaker, breaker, this is Biblical Thunder southbound on 65 at mile marker 91. I've got 2 four-wheelers trying to run me off the road. Possible hijacking in progress. Any drivers in the area, I could use some help." The response was immediate. Truckers might compete for loads, might cut each other off at fuel pumps, but when one of us was in real danger, we stood together. "This is Mud Duck, northbound at marker 89, making a U-turn now." "Steel Horse here, southbound at 93. I see you, Biblical. Hang tight." "Lazy Lightning, westbound on the 265 interchange. Coming your way." Within minutes, I had an escort. 2 trucks behind me, blocking Alpheus's vehicles from getting close. One beside me, preventing them from forcing me over. The hazmat tanker ahead slowed down, boxing us all into a rolling fortress at exactly 55 miles per hour. Alpheus's voice on the radio was furious. "You're making a mistake, Eliphalet. You can't run forever." But I didn't need forever. I just needed to buy time for the FBI to respond. We rolled in formation for 10 miles, a convoy of protection that Alpheus's cars couldn't break. Then I saw the helicopter overhead and the state police cars ahead, lights flashing. The roadblock was massive, 20 cars at least, FBI, state police, probably ATF. Alpheus's vehicles tried to flee but were immediately surrounded. I pulled over as directed, hands visible, following the instructions Jake had given me months ago for this scenario. An FBI agent I didn't recognize approached my cab. "Mr. Elifali, we need you to step out of the vehicle. You're safe now." But I wasn't safe. Not really. As they were arresting Alpheus and his crew, as they were opening the trailer to reveal not just stolen fuel but hundreds of kilos of synthetic opioids, I realized that this was just the beginning. Alpheus was middle management. The real players, the ones Cordelia had warned me about, were still out there. The FBI safe house was a nondescript apartment in Columbus, Ohio. 4th floor, 1 bedroom, windows that faced a brick wall. They told me it would be temporary, just until the trial. But temporary stretched into weeks, then months. I wasn't allowed to drive, wasn't allowed to contact anyone from my old life, wasn't even allowed to look out the window without permission. For a trucker who'd spent 34 years on the open road, it was like being buried alive. Jake visited twice a week, always with updates, always with more questions. They'd arrested 43 people in the initial sweep, seized $12 million in assets, shut down the entire fuel theft operation. But the big fish had gotten away. The people above Alpheus had vanished like smoke, along with most of the money and, more concerning, their list of everyone who'd cooperated with the investigation. "We've got you covered," Jake assured me. 24-hour protection. New identity ready to go after the trial. You did the right thing, Eli. But doing the right thing doesn't pay the bills. My truck had been impounded as evidence. My business was dead. No loads, no income, no future in the only career I'd ever known. The FBI gave me a stipend, enough for food and basic needs, but it was nothing compared to what I'd been making on the road. I spent my days watching trucks pass on the highway visible from the bathroom window, listening to traffic reports on the radio, calculating routes in my head for runs I'd never make. The walls felt like they were closing in a little more each day. Cordelia was in protective custody too, somewhere else. They wouldn't tell me where. 16 other station owners had come forward after the arrests, all telling the same story of extortion and threats. The case was solid, they said. Alpheus was looking at 25 to life. His crew would get similar sentences, justice was being served. But justice has a price, and I was paying it. The trial was set for September. As the date approached, strange things started happening. My FBI handlers found a GPS tracker on their vehicle. Someone had been asking questions about me at my old truck stops, showing my picture around. A safe house in Indiana where another witness was being held caught fire. Electrical problem, they said, but nobody believed it. Then Cordelia disappeared. Jake broke the news on a humid Tuesday morning. She'd gone out for groceries, against protocol, but understandable after months of confinement, and never came back. Her car was found in a rest stop parking lot, doors open, her purse still on the seat. No blood, no signs of struggle, just gone. "We're moving you," Jake said. "Tonight. New location, new detail, everything changes." But that night, as I was packing my few possessions, the power went out. Not just the apartment, the whole block. My protection detail immediately went on alert, radios crackling with tension. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in a sick green glow. That's when I heard it. A sound I'd recognize anywhere. The distinctive rumble of a diesel engine, specifically a Detroit Series 60. The same engine in my impounded truck. I looked out the window despite protocol and saw it. My truck, my actual truck with my company name still on the door, idling in the alley below. "That's impossible," one of the agents said. "That vehicle is in federal impound." But there it was. And standing beside it, visible in the headlights, was someone I recognized but had never expected to see. Cordelia. She was alive, But something was wrong. Even from 4 floors up, I could see the way she stood, stiff and unnatural, like someone was holding strings. She looked up at my window and mouthed a single word, "Run." The apartment door exploded inward. Not kicked, not broken, exploded. The blast knocked 2 agents down, sent me flying into the wall. Through the smoke and chaos, figures in tactical gear stormed in. Not FBI, not police. These were professionals, military precision weapons I didn't recognize. An agent beside me managed to get his weapon out, fired 3 shots that should have hit center mass. The rounds struck, I saw them hit, but the attacker didn't go down. Body armor, high-end stuff, probably military grade. The attacker's return fire was a whisper, suppressed weapon, and the agent dropped. They weren't trying to kill me. That became clear quickly. They wanted me alive. One of them grabbed me, zip-tied my hands before I could resist, and started dragging me toward the door. But Jake and the remaining agents regrouped, laying down covering fire from the hallway. "Kitchen window!" Jake yelled. "Fire escape!" I rolled that direction, hands still tied, as the apartment turned into a war zone. Jake cut my ties and shoved me toward the window. "My truck!" I gasped. "They have my truck!" "Forget the truck, move!" But I couldn't forget it. That truck was my life, my identity, everything I'd built over 3 decades. Seeing it down there was like seeing a piece of myself that had been stolen and corrupted. The fire escape was rusted, probably hadn't been used in years. It groaned under our weight as we descended, Jake covering our retreat. We made it 2 floors before they started shooting from the window above. Rounds sparked off the metal, shattering windows, sending cascades of glass into the alley. That's when my truck roared to life properly, and I heard a voice over its CB radio, amplified through external speakers I'd installed years ago for yard communication. It was Alpheus. "Hello, Eliphalet. Did you really think federal custody would protect you? Did you think we wouldn't have people inside? Every agency, every department, we own someone. You cost us everything. Now we're returning the favor." The truck lurched forward, and Cordelia was still standing there, but now I could see the device strapped to her chest, the red lights blinking. They'd turned her into a weapon. "Choose," Alpheus's voice continued. "Come with us now, call off your testimony, and she lives. Keep running, and she dies. You have 30 seconds. Jake grabbed my arm. "It's a trap, we can't," but I was already moving, not toward them, but toward the truck, my truck. I knew every inch of that machine, every modification I'd made over the years, including the emergency fuel cutoff I'd installed after a close call with a fuel fire years ago. A hidden switch under the rear bumper that would immediately stop fuel flow to the engine. I sprinted across the alley, dove under the trailer just as shots rang out above. My fingers found the switch through muscle memory, flipped it. The engine coughed, sputtered, died. The electrical systems would stay on for a few minutes on battery power, but the truck wasn't going anywhere. In the confusion, Jake's backup finally arrived. Real FBI this time, dozens of them, surrounding the alley. The attackers tried to flee but found themselves trapped. The smart ones surrendered. The others didn't make it. Cordelia was rescued. The device on her was fake. Psychological warfare, nothing more. She'd been held in a warehouse, forced to participate by threats against her family. The trauma in her eyes was real, though. Whatever she'd seen, whatever they'd done to her in those missing days had broken something inside. They never found Alpheus. The voice had been a recording, triggered remotely. He was probably states away, maybe even out of the country. But they did find his inside man, a senior FBI administrator who'd been feeding them information for years, paid off with money from the fuel theft operation. The trial went ahead without me. They used my recorded testimony, the evidence I'd gathered, but I wasn't there. I was already gone, relocated under witness protection to a place I can't name, with a name that isn't mine, doing work that isn't trucking. They gave me a new identity, a new history, even a new CDL under my new name. But I can't use it. Too risky, they say. Too many people in the trucking world know my face, my habits, my patterns. One slip, and they'd find me. So I worked in a warehouse, loading trucks instead of driving them. Watching other drivers head out on runs I used to make, routes I still dreamed about. The pay was terrible. The work was mindless, but I was alive. That's what Jake told me when he checked in every few months. I was alive, and the bad guys were in prison. Justice was served. But here's the thing about justice. It's not the same as getting your life back. Sometimes, late at night, I'd go to truck stops. Not to drive, just to be around the culture, the people, the machines. I'd sit in the restaurants listening to drivers complain about electronic logs and fuel prices, planning their routes on napkins, telling stories about close calls and weird loads. I wanted to join in, wanted to share my own stories, but I couldn't. My stories would get me killed. One night, about 6 months after the trial, I was at a Flying J near wherever I'm not supposed to say I am. It was 2 a.m., prime time for long-haul drivers to be taking their mandatory breaks. I was nursing my third cup of coffee when I heard a conversation at the next booth that made my blood freeze. You hear about that thing in Michigan, that fuel theft ring? Yeah, man, FBI shut it down, bunch of people went to prison. That's what they want you to think, but my cousin works at a truck stop near Kalamazoo. Says the same stuff is still happening, just more careful now. Different people running it, but same scam. No way. After all that heat? Think about it. How much money was involved? Millions per month? You think people just walk away from that? Nah, they just got smarter. Now they're using company drivers, ones who don't even know they're involved. Legit shipping companies whose dispatchers are on the take, routing trucks through specific stops, skimming fuel without the driver even knowing. I wanted to scream, wanted to tell them everything, warn them about the signs to look for. But I just paid for my coffee and left. I found a payphone. They still exist if you know where to look, and called Jake. It's starting again, I told him. The fuel theft. Different people, same operation. We know, he said after a pause. We're monitoring it, but without someone inside, without evidence. Send me in. Absolutely not. You're burned, Eli. Everyone in that world knows who you are now. Not everyone. And I know things, patterns, details that could help identify. No. You're done. You did your part, live your life. But what life? The warehouse job, the fake name, the constant looking over my shoulder. 3 weeks later, I did something stupid. I bought a truck, not under my real name, not with any connection to my old identity. Cash purchase from a private seller, older Freightliner that had seen better days but still ran solid. I registered it under a shell company I'd set up, got operating authority under a different name, even grew a beard and gained 30 pounds to change my appearance. I started running loads again. Not the routes I used to run, those were too dangerous, but other routes, southwest mostly, staying away from Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, places where nobody would recognize me. I was careful, paranoid even. Never stopped at the same place twice, never took the same route, always checked my truck for trackers. For 3 months it worked. I was driving again, feeling the road under 18 wheels, watching sunrises from the cab, living instead of just existing. I knew it was dangerous, knew it was stupid, but I couldn't help myself. Trucking wasn't just what I did, it was who I was. The mistake came in New Mexico. I'd taken a load of construction equipment to Albuquerque, was heading back east with a load of Chile peppers. Stopped at a truck stop near Santa Rosa for fuel. It was busy, dozens of trucks, should have been safe in the crowd. I was at the fuel island watching the numbers roll on the pump when I heard a voice behind me. Elifale. Not my new name. My real name. I turned slowly, hand moving to the knife I kept in my pocket now. It was Cordelia, but not the broken, traumatized Cordelia from the safe house. This was different, harder. Her eyes were clear, focused, dangerous. Hello, Eli. We need to talk. You're supposed to be in protection. I left, month ago. Couldn't stand it anymore, same as you apparently. She gestured at my truck. Nice rig. Bit of a downgrade from your old one. What do you want? Same thing you want. My life back, my business back, justice that actually means something. The people responsible are in prison. She laughed, bitter and sharp. The puppets are in prison. The real players, the ones who actually profited, they're still out there. Still running operations, still destroying lives. The FBI got their headlines, their conviction stats. Case closed as far as they're concerned. But you and I know better. We know it's not over. She pulled out a folder, handed it to me. Inside were photos, documents, financial records. I've been investigating on my own, she said, following the money that the FBI didn't care about once they got Alpheus. It leads to a company in Detroit, legitimate on the surface, logistics, transportation, consulting. But underneath, they're the ones who set up the fuel theft. They're the ones who ordered the hits, and they're setting up a new operation, bigger than before. Why are you telling me this? Because I can't do it alone. I need someone who knows the trucking world. Someone who can move freely, gather information. Someone they think is gone. You're asking me to give up my protection, my new identity, everything. I'm asking you to fight back, really fight back. Not just testify and hide, but take them down completely. I looked at the documents. Names I recognized, companies I'd delivered to, routes that made sense now in a different context. She was right. The cancer was still there, still spreading. What's your plan? We become what they were. We set up our own operation, but clean. We buy a truck stop, run it legitimate, but use it to monitor their activities. We recruit drivers, honest ones who've been hurt by these people. We build a network that can watch and document everything they do. That would take money. Serious money. She smiled for the first time. Remember that 10,000 Alpheus gave you as a signing bonus? The FBI never found all the cash from the operation. Millions hidden in various places. I know where some of it is. We use their own money against them. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was probably going to get us both killed. I'm in, I said. That was 8 months ago. We bought a truck stop in Missouri, right off I-70. Nothing fancy, but strategic location. A crossroads where a lot of cargo moves through. We hired drivers who'd been victims of the theft ring, mechanics who'd been forced to modify pumps, office workers who'd been threatened into silence. All of us fugitives from witness protection, all of us with nothing left to lose. We called ourselves the Highway Underground. Dramatic name, but it fit. We monitored fuel purchases, tracked suspicious trucks, documented patterns. When we found evidence of new theft operations, we didn't go to the FBI. They'd just arrest us for violating our protection agreements. Instead, we went to the drivers. The truck stop we bought was called the Crossroads Haven. Previous owner had died of a heart attack. A real one, we verified. And his widow just wanted out. We paid cash, changed nothing about the exterior, kept all the original staff who wanted to stay. To anyone driving by, it looked exactly the same as it had for 20 years. But underneath, we were building something revolutionary. Every fuel pump had hidden cameras that captured license plates and dot numbers. Every transaction was logged and cross-referenced against databases we'd built of known theft operations. We installed sensors that could detect the electronic signatures of the remote pump controllers the thieves used. And most importantly, we had eyes and ears everywhere. Drivers who stopped regularly, mechanics who worked on suspicious trucks, even lot lizards who overheard conversations they shouldn't have. Cordelia ran the legitimate business side while I coordinated our network of driver informants. We had 37 truckers who were actively gathering intelligence, all of them victims of the original ring or similar operations. They didn't work for free. We paid them from the stolen money Cordelia had recovered, turning blood money into justice funds. The first breakthrough came 3 months after we opened. A driver named Big Tom, one of our informants, noticed something odd at a fuel stop in Detroit. Trucks were pulling in, connecting to the pumps, but not actually fueling. The displays showed gallons dispensed, credit cards were charged, but the trucks weren't getting heavier. The fuel was going somewhere else. I took a run up there myself, pulling a legitimate load of lumber to maintain my cover. The station was a massive plaza-style stop, dozens of pumps, hundreds of trucks daily. Perfect place to hide a theft operation in plain sight. I fueled up at different pumps over 2 days, measuring actual fuel received against what I was charged for. The scam was sophisticated. They were only skimming about 8%, small enough that most drivers wouldn't notice, but across hundreds of trucks, it added up to thousands of gallons daily. But this time, I didn't just document it. I followed the money. The station was owned by a company called Midwest Transit Solutions. They owned 14 truck stops across Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. Their CEO was a man named Vincent Caruso, and a little digging showed he had connections to the same Detroit families Cordelia had mentioned. More interesting, his company had recently acquired 3 of the stations that had been shut down after the original FBI raid, buying them for pennies on the dollar. We needed more than suspicion. We needed proof. So I did something incredibly dangerous. I applied for a job with them, not as a driver, but as a fuel system maintenance technician. I'd learned enough about the modified pumps during the original investigation to fake expertise. Used a false identity that would stand up to a basic background check but not a deep dive. The interview was at their corporate office in Detroit, a gleaming tower that screamed legitimate business. Vincent Caruso interviewed me personally, which should have been my first warning. CEOs don't usually interview maintenance techs. He was exactly what you'd expect. Expensive suit, perfect teeth, eyes that never quite smiled even when his mouth did. "You have experience with our type of fuel systems?" he asked, sliding a technical diagram across the desk. I recognized it immediately. It was a blueprint for the remote-controlled pumps, but disguised as a standard maintenance schematic. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd miss it. "Yes, sir. Worked with similar systems in Kansas City." A lie, but a calculated one. He studied me for a long moment. "You look familiar. Have we met?" My blood went cold, but I kept my expression neutral. "Don't think so. I've got one of those faces." He made a note on his pad. "The job requires travel, all our locations, irregular hours. Sometimes you'll be working when the stations are closed. That a problem?" "No, sir. I'm single, no ties. Can work whenever you need." "Good. You'll be working under our head of maintenance, Mr. Alpheus." I almost reacted. Almost. Caught myself just in time, turned the shock into a cough. "Sorry, throat's dry. Did you say Alpheus?" "Yes. Wonderful employee. Recently promoted after some unfortunate legal troubles were resolved. Misunderstandings, all cleared up now." Alpheus was supposed to be in federal prison. But here was Caruso telling me he was not only free but working for them. Either Caruso was lying to test me, or something had gone very wrong with the federal case. I took the job. My first day was at a station in Dearborn. The legitimate staff treated me like any other maintenance worker, but there was an undercurrent of something else. Certain people watched me too carefully. Certain areas were off limits without explanation. And Alpheus was nowhere to be seen, though everyone acted like he might show up at any moment. The head mechanic, an older guy named Carl, took me under his wing, showed me the normal maintenance routines, the legitimate stuff. But on my third day, he took me to a restricted area behind the station. "Real work happens here," he said, unlocking a reinforced door. Inside was a control room that looked like something from a NASA facility. Monitors showing every pump at every station they owned, real-time fuel flow data, transaction logs, and, most telling, a second set of displays showing diverted inventory. "Every station has secondary tanks," Carl explained, probably thinking I already knew. "Computer controls the diversion rate based on traffic patterns, time of day, even weather. Maximize skim without triggering suspicion." "Sophisticated," I said, taking mental photos of everything. "Gets better, watch this." He pulled up a screen showing truck locations, hundreds of dots moving across a map of the Midwest. Every truck that fuels at our stations gets tagged. GPS tracker attached to the undercarriage, magnetic, battery lasts about a month. We know where every load goes, which routes pay best, which companies move what product. Why track them? Carl gave me a look like I was slow. Information is money. We sell route data to competitors, tell them exactly when and where their rivals are delivering. Some companies pay big money for that intelligence. It was worse than just fuel theft. They were conducting corporate espionage on a massive scale, using unwitting truckers as their intelligence network. I worked there for 2 weeks, documenting everything, secretly photographing the control systems, copying files when I could. Every night, I'd drive back to Missouri and upload everything to encrypted servers Cordelia had set up. We were building a case that made the original FBI investigation look like a parking ticket, but we weren't the only ones investigating. One night, I was leaving the Dearborn station after a late shift when I noticed a familiar truck in the parking lot. My old Peterbilt, the one that had supposedly been in federal impound. But the DOT numbers were different, the company name painted over. I walked closer, careful to stay in the camera blind spots I'd memorized. The door was unlocked. Inside, the cab had been stripped and rebuilt. All my personal touches were gone, replaced with surveillance equipment. Cameras, recording devices, satellite uplinks. This wasn't just my old truck, it was a mobile command center. Beautiful machine, isn't it? I spun around. Alpheus stood there very much not in prison, holding a gun loosely at his side. "Hello, Eliphalet. Or should I say David?" Using my fake identity name. "Did you really think we wouldn't figure it out? Vincent knew who you were the moment you walked in. We've been watching you for months, ever since you and Cordelia started your little underground railroad. How are you not in prison?" "Prison?" He laughed. "I spent 3 weeks in federal custody before making bail. The trial? My lawyers got everything thrown out on technicalities, illegal search, compromised evidence chain, witness credibility issues. Amazing what money can buy in the justice system." He gestured with the gun toward the truck. "Get in. We're going for a ride." I calculated my chances. The gun was a problem, but he was standing close, too close. I'd learned some things during my time in protection, things the FBI taught witnesses who might need to defend themselves. But before I could move, more figures emerged from the shadows. 4 men, all armed, all watching me with professional focus. "Don't be stupid," Alpheus said. "You're valuable alive. Dead, you're just another missing trucker." I got in the truck. Alpheus climbed into the passenger seat while one of his men took the wheel. The others followed in separate vehicles. We pulled out onto I-94, heading west toward Chicago. "You cost us $40 million, Alpheus said conversationally, like we were discussing weather. "The FBI raids, the frozen accounts, the closed stations. $40 million. Do you have any idea what that means to our organization?" "Good start?" He backhanded me, casual but hard enough to split my lip. "It means we had to get creative. The fuel theft was easy money, low risk. Now we're into harder things, more dangerous cargo, more violent partners." He pulled out a tablet, showed me a screen full of routing data. "Every truck you and Cordelia tagged, every driver in your network, we know them all. We've been feeding you information, letting you think you were winning." My blood went cold. We'd been compromised from the start. "Where's Cordelia?" "Safe. For now. She's actually quite talented. We've offered her a position running our Missouri operation. Your little truck stop would make an excellent addition to our network." "She'll never work for you." "No, we'll see. People change their minds when properly motivated." We were passing through Gary, Indiana when I saw them. 3 trucks running in formation, matching our speed exactly. I recognized the lead driver through his window, Big Tom from our network. Somehow they'd found us. Somehow they were tracking me. The CB radio in the truck crackled to life. "Breaker, breaker. This is the cavalry. Biblical thunder, you copy?" My old handle. Tom knew I was in this truck. I lunged for the radio, but Alpheus grabbed my wrist. "Don't," he warned. But I could see uncertainty in his eyes. He hadn't expected this. More trucks appeared, 4, 5, 6, all matching speed, boxing us in. The driver of my truck started sweating, looking for an exit, but the truckers had us locked in tight. "State police ahead," someone said over the radio. "Roadblock at mile marker 74. All trucks be advised." But it wasn't a normal roadblock. As we came over a rise, I could see dozens of police cars, but also news vans, helicopters overhead. This was a major operation, and we were driving right into it. Alpheus grabbed the radio. "All units abort. Scatter pattern Delta." But his chase vehicles couldn't get through the wall of trucks surrounding us. We were trapped, being herded directly into the police checkpoint. Alpheus turned to me, gun raised. "You set this up?" "No," I said honestly, "but my friends did." The truck lurched as the driver tried to brake, but Big Tom's truck bumped us from behind, keeping us moving forward. The police vehicles ahead turned on their lights, officers taking positions behind their cars. This was going to end one of 2 ways, and neither was good for Alpheus. He made a decision. "Stop the truck." The driver pulled over, still a quarter mile from the roadblock. Alpheus grabbed me, gun to my head, and forced me out of the cab. The other truckers stopped too, forming a semicircle around us. I could see faces I recognized, drivers from our network, but also others, strangers who'd joined the convoy. "Back off!" Alpheus shouted. "Everyone back off, or he dies!" That's when Cordelia's voice came over the CB, broadcast through someone's external speakers. "Alpheus, this is Cordelia. You're surrounded by 47 trucks and half the Indiana State Police. FBI is en route. It's over. I've got a Lifolet. And we've got video evidence of you kidnapping him, transmitted live to every news station in the Midwest. You're on national television right now. Smile for the cameras." I could see the news helicopters circling overhead, cameras pointed directly at us. Alpheus's hand was shaking now, the gun wavering. "Let him go," Cordelia continued. "You're already going to prison. Don't add murder charges." "I'm not going back to prison," Alpheus said. and I heard the desperation in his voice. "I'll die first. That's your choice. But Eli doesn't have to die with you." The standoff lasted 10 more minutes. Alpheus rambling about respect, about honor among thieves, about how we'd destroyed something beautiful. The police moved closer, inch by inch, while the truckers held their ground. Finally, a police negotiator took over from Cordelia, talking in calm, measured tones about surrender procedures, about how this could end peacefully. It was the news helicopters that finally broke him. One swooped low, the downdraft from its rotors kicking up dust and debris. Alpheus flinched, his grip loosening for just a second. That's all I needed. I dropped, twisted, and ran. Not toward the police, but toward the nearest truck. Big Tom's truck. Alpheus fired twice. The first shot went wide. The second caught me in the shoulder, spinning me around. But momentum carried me forward, and Tom pulled me up into his cab as more shots rang out. The police returned fire, and Alpheus went down. I don't remember much after that. EMTs, ambulances, lots of questions from lots of badges. Surgery to remove the bullet, which had thankfully missed anything vital. When I woke up properly, Jake was sitting beside my hospital bed. "You're an idiot," he said. "You violated witness protection, conducted illegal surveillance, interfered with an ongoing federal investigation, and nearly got yourself killed. Good to see you, too. We've been watching Caruso's organization for months, building a RICO case that would have taken down the entire network. You almost blew it." "Almost?" He smiled despite himself. "Your intelligence helped. The files you uploaded, the documentation. We were able to accelerate our timeline. Raids went down this morning. 14 truck stops, the corporate office, even Caruso's home, 130 arrests. Alpheus survived. He'll live to stand trial. Real trial this time, federal prosecutors who aren't on the take. And Cordelia? Down the hall. Bullet grazed her leg during the raid on your truck stop. Yeah, they hit that too. But your people fought back. Quite effectively, actually. Turns out truckers with tire irons are surprisingly good at defense." He stood to leave, then turned back. "Your witness protection is blown. No way to salvage it. But given what you've done, the Bureau is willing to offer you something else. Consultant position, helping us understand and prevent these operations. Decent pay, real identity, ability to drive again. I just want my truck back. My real truck. The Peterbilt, it's evidence now, but when the case is over," he shrugged. "We'll see what we can do." The trials took 2 years. Vincent Caruso got life without parole. Turns out the fuel theft was just the tip of his criminal iceberg. Alpheus got 40 years, eligible for parole in 20 if he behaves. Dozens of others got various sentences. The fuel theft ring was completely dismantled, this time for real. Cordelia and I kept the truck stop, renamed it Haven's Rest, and run it completely legitimate now. We still help drivers who've been wronged, still gather information about criminal operations, but now we pass it directly to law enforcement. We're officially FBI consultants, which provides some protection and a steady income. I got my truck back eventually. Had to completely rebuild it. They'd destroyed it, converting it to surveillance, but the frame was still good, the engine still solid. Cost me everything I'd saved, but it was worth it. First time I fired it up, heard that Detroit Series 60 rumble, I actually cried. I'm back on the road now. Different routes, always varying, always careful. I know there are still people out there who'd like to see me dead. Family members of those we put away, competitors who lost money, corrupt cops who lost income. But I refuse to live in fear. The road is my home. Always has been. Always will be. Sometimes I stop at truck stops and talk to young drivers. the ones just starting out. I tell them to watch their fuel gauges, check their receipts, trust their instincts when something feels wrong. Most think I'm just a paranoid old-timer, but occasionally one will lean in and ask, "Are you him? Are you Biblical Thunder, the one who broke up the ring?" I never confirm it, but I don't deny it either. The truth is, the fight never really ends. For every operation we shut down, another starts up. Different people, same greed. The FBI task force I work with now has identified 17 new fuel theft operations in the last year alone. Smaller, smarter, having learned from the mistakes of those who came before. But we've learned too. We've got better detection systems, better networks of informants, better coordination between agencies, and most importantly, we've got truckers who are watching out for each other. Last week I was running a load through Michigan, first time I'd been back since everything went down. Stopped at a truck stop near Battle Creek, not far from where it all started. Different company owns it now, all new pumps, legitimate operation. But as I was fueling, an old-timer walked up to me. "I remember you," he said. "You're the one who used to stop here regular, back before the troubles." "Long time ago." "Yeah. Lost about 10,000 in stolen fuel over 2 years. Never knew it until the FBI showed me the real numbers. Would have bankrupted me if I hadn't gotten that settlement from the class action. Glad you got something back." He studied me for a moment. "My nephew's just starting out, owner-operator, struggling to make ends meet. Any advice?" I thought about it. "Tell him to trust his numbers. If something doesn't add up, there's a reason. Tell him to watch out for other drivers and they'll watch out for him. And tell him—" I paused, remembering all the pain, all the loss, all the fights. "Tell him the road remembers everything, every crime, every kindness, every stand someone takes. Make sure he's on the right side of that memory." The old-timer nodded, shook my hand, and walked away. I finished fueling, every gallon accounted for, and got back on the road. I drive different routes now, but the job's the same. Pick up here, deliver there, keep the economy moving one load at a time. The FBI work is just a sideline, something I do because I can. Because I've seen what happens when good people do nothing. But mostly I drive because it's who I am. Eliphalet the trucker. Biblical Thunder on the CB. The one who stood up to the thieves and lived to tell about it. The road ahead stretches endless under my headlights, full of possibilities and dangers in equal measure. My shoulder still aches where the bullet hit, a permanent reminder of how close I came to losing everything. But I'm still here, still rolling, still fighting the good fight. Because that's what truckers do. We keep moving forward, no matter what tries to stop us. We watch out for each other, even when no one else will. And when someone tries to steal from us, tries to corrupt our industry, tries to break our brotherhood, we stand together and fight back. The fuel theft ring is dead. Long live the honest drivers who killed it. But I still check my fuel gauges obsessively, still calculate consumption at every stop, still watch for the signs of tampering. Once you've seen how deep the corruption can go, you never fully relax again. That's the real price of justice. Not the bullet wound or the lost years, but the permanent vigilance. The knowledge that evil doesn't disappear. It just changes shape and tries again. My phone buzzes. Jake, with intel about a new operation running through Illinois. Fake weigh stations that overcharge permits, then offer to fix the problem for cash. Small time compared to what we faced, but crime is crime. I programmed the GPS for Chicago, already planning my approach. I'll need to recruit some local drivers, set up surveillance, build a pattern of evidence. The same work, different day. As I merge onto the interstate, the CB comes alive with chatter. Weather reports, traffic updates, drivers warning each other about speed traps and construction zones. The brotherhood of the road, alive and well, protecting its own. "Biblical thunder, you out there?" Big Tom's voice cuts through the noise. 10-4, Big Tom, rolling westbound. Heard there might be some weather in Illinois. The kind that affects fuel prices, if you know what I mean. He's heard about the new operation, too. Word travels fast among truckers. "Copy that. Might have to stop and check the forecast. Got your back if you need it. Cavalry's always ready." "Appreciate it, brother." The sun sets behind me as I drive toward another fight. Another chance to protect the drivers who just want to make an honest living. Cordelia calls to update me on something suspicious at a competitor's truck stop. 3 other drivers check in with intelligence they've gathered. The network is strong, growing stronger every day. This is my life now. Part trucker, part investigator, full-time guardian of the road. It's dangerous, exhausting, and probably will get me killed eventually. But it's also necessary. Someone has to stand watch. Someone has to fight back. Someone has to remember. And until my last mile, that someone is me. The road stretches on, and I follow it into the darkness, ready for whatever comes next. Because I'm a trucker, and truckers never quit. The name's Phineas, and before you ask, yes, it's my real name. My grandfather was Phineas, his grandfather was Phineas, and somewhere back in the family tree there's probably a whole line of us stretching back to when people thought naming your kid after biblical figures would guarantee them a righteous life. Well, I've been driving trucks for 41 years now, and I can tell you that righteousness has nothing to do with your name, and everything to do with the choices you make when nobody's watching. I've hauled everything you can imagine across these Midwest highways. Livestock, hazmat, oversized loads that required police escorts and special permits. Started driving in 1983 when I was 18, fresh out of high school with nothing but a CDL and a need to be anywhere but the small Illinois town where I grew up. The road saved me back then, gave me purpose, gave me freedom. But what happened last September on that empty stretch of Highway 30 in Ohio, that's when I learned that sometimes the road takes as much as it gives. I was running a dedicated route for a furniture manufacturer, hauling completed orders from their factory in Indiana to distribution centers across the Midwest. Good money, predictable schedule, home most weekends. After 4 decades of irregular runs and uncertain income, it was nice to have stability. My dispatcher, a woman named Sophronia who'd been in the business almost as long as me, kept me busy but never pushed too hard. She understood that us older drivers knew our limits, knew when to push through and when to pull over. It was a Thursday evening, around 8 p.m. when I first saw the truck. I was eastbound on US 30, about 50 miles west of Mansfield, Ohio. That stretch of highway is mostly farmland, corn and soybeans as far as you can see during the day. But at night it's just darkness punctuated by the occasional farmhouse light. The moon was new that night, making everything beyond my headlights invisible. The truck was on the shoulder, hazard lights still blinking weakly. A Kenworth W900, older model, probably mid-90s from the look of it. Blue cab with custom striping, though the paint was faded and dirty. No trailer attached, just the tractor sitting there alone. As I passed, my headlights swept across the cab and I could see the driver's door hanging open. Now, you see abandoned vehicles on the highway all the time. Breakdowns, accidents, drivers who walk to get help. Usually, there's nothing sinister about it. But something about this truck made me ease off the accelerator. Maybe it was the way the door hung open, like someone had left in a hurry. Maybe it was the fact that the hazards were still on, meaning the battery hadn't died yet, so it couldn't have been there too long. Or maybe it was just 41 years of instinct telling me something was wrong. I picked up my CB, switched to channel 19. Breaker, breaker. This is Midwest Thunder eastbound on 30 near mile marker 147. Anybody know about that blue Kenworth on the shoulder? Static for a moment, then a voice. This is Night Rider, westbound at 145. Saw that truck there this morning when I was heading east. Hasn't moved all day. All day, with the door open and hazards still running. That wasn't right. I should have just called it in to the state police and kept driving. Should have minded my own business. But I've always had this problem with leaving things alone when they don't feel right. So I slowed down, found a wide spot about a quarter mile ahead, and carefully turned my rig around. I pulled up behind the abandoned truck, positioning my headlights to illuminate it fully. Left my engine running, grabbed my flashlight and my phone. I also grabbed the tire iron I keep behind my seat. You never know. The closer I got, the more wrong everything felt. The truck was clean, not new clean, but maintained clean. Someone cared about this rig. The tires were good, not worn. The DOT numbers on the side were clear and current. The license plate was from Michigan. Commercial tags that wouldn't expire for another 3 months. I approached the open door carefully, flashlight beam leading the way. The interior light was off, which was strange given that the door was open. Usually, that would trigger the dome light. I shone my flashlight inside. The cab was immaculate. No trash, no scattered belongings, everything in its place. The keys were still in the ignition, engine off but electrical system still on. That's why the hazards were still working. There was a logbook on the passenger seat, closed. A thermos in the cup holder, still half full of coffee. The sleeper curtain was pulled back, revealing a neatly made bed. But what really caught my attention was the CB radio. It had been ripped out. Not disconnected, not removed, ripped. Wires hung loose where it had been yanked from the dash, and there were scratches on the surrounding plastic like someone had used a crowbar. I took photos with my phone, then carefully reached in and picked up the logbook, using my sleeve to avoid leaving fingerprints. The driver's name was William Turner, based out of Detroit. His last entry was from the previous day, showing he'd stopped for fuel in Fort Wayne. According to the log, he was hauling a load to Columbus, but there was no trailer attached to the truck now. I walked around the truck looking for any signs of damage or struggle. The fifth wheel was down and locked, like a trailer had been attached recently. There were fresh scratches on the plate, like something had been yanked away forcefully. The glad hands, the air and electrical connections for the trailer, were damaged, torn rather than disconnected properly. That's when I noticed the smell. Diesel fuel, but not from the truck's tanks. I followed my nose to a patch of grass behind the truck. The ground was soaked with fuel, probably 50 gallons or more. Like someone had deliberately drained a tank. But the truck's fuel tanks were intact and, from what I could tell by knocking on them, still mostly full. I was so focused on the fuel smell that I almost missed the other thing. Tire tracks in the grass, big ones, leading from where the trailer should have been attached, across the shoulder and into the field beyond. Deep tracks, like whatever made them was heavy. I followed them with my flashlight beam as far as I could see, but they disappeared into the darkness of the cornfield. I called Sophronia. Even though it was late, I knew she'd answer. She always did. Phineas, everything okay? You're showing stopped on GPS. I'm fine, but I found something. Abandoned truck, driver missing. Looks like the trailer was taken, maybe hijacked. Jesus, you called the police? About to. But Sophie, can you run a check on a driver named William Turner out of Detroit? DOT number 2847293. I heard her typing. Give me a minute. Okay, William Turner. Turner Logistics LLC. Single truck operation based in Detroit. Clean record, no violations. Oh, what? He's flagged as missing. His company, which is just him, apparently reported him and his load missing yesterday. He was hauling, medical equipment, diagnostic machines, the expensive kind. Total value over $3 million. $3 million. That explained the hijacking, but not the abandoned truck or the ripped-out CB. Sophie, I'm going to call the police, but can you check if there have been any other similar incidents? Abandoned trucks, stolen medical equipment, anything like that? Already ahead of you, there were 2 others in the past month. One in Indiana, one in Illinois. Same MO, truck abandoned, trailer missing, CB radio destroyed. A pattern. This wasn't random. I called 911, reported what I'd found. The dispatcher said units were on the way, told me to wait in my truck and not touch anything else. But while I was waiting, I couldn't stop thinking about those tire tracks leading into the cornfield. Why take the trailer that way, instead of just driving it down the highway? 20 minutes later, 2 state police cruisers showed up, followed by a detective in an unmarked car. The detective, a tired-looking man named Morrison, took my statement while the uniform secured the scene. "You said the tire tracks led into the field," he asked. "Yes, sir. Deep ones, like the trailer was full." He nodded, made a note. "We've been tracking these hijackings. This is the 4th one. The others, we found the trailers eventually. Empty, abandoned in rural areas. Whatever they're stealing, they're moving it fast." "What about the drivers?" Morrison's expression darkened. 2 turned up. One was found wandering a truck stop 3 days later, confused, claiming memory loss. The other... He paused. The other was found dead in a ditch 50 miles from where his truck was abandoned. Heart attack, the coroner said, but he was 35 and healthy. "And the 3rd driver? Still missing. That's Turner, the one whose truck you found." A chill ran down my spine. $3 million in medical equipment was worth killing for, but this felt like more than just theft. "Detective, why destroy the CB radios?" "We think it's to prevent the drivers from calling for help immediately, but it's strange. Most would just take the whole truck or disable it completely. This is specific." I gave him my contact information, then got back in my truck. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. As I pulled away, I took one last look at the abandoned Kenworth in my mirrors. The hazard lights had finally died, leaving it as just a dark shape against the darker night. I made my delivery in Columbus the next morning, but my mind wasn't on the job. I kept thinking about William Turner, about those tire tracks, about the pattern Morrison had described. After I got unloaded, instead of heading back immediately, I drove to the truck stop where the first hijacking had happened. It was a small place off I-70, the kind of independent stop that was barely hanging on against the big chains. The manager, an older woman named Ruth, remembered the incident. "Happened right there," she said, pointing to the far corner of the lot. "Driver came in around midnight, said he was taking his break. Next morning, truck was still there, but he was gone. Door open, just like you described, trailer missing. Did he seem normal when he came in?" She thought about it. "Now that you mention it, he seemed nervous. Kept looking over his shoulder. Bought 3 cups of coffee like he was planning to drive all night despite saying he was taking a break." "Did he mention anyone following him? Any problems?" "No, but..." She hesitated. "This is probably nothing, but there was another driver that night. Local guy, Silas something. He was asking questions about trucks hauling medical supplies. Said he worked for a logistics company doing market research. But something about him felt off. Off how? He knew too much. Specific questions about routes, security protocols, which companies were hauling what. And he had this way of watching people without seeming to watch them, you know?" I knew exactly what she meant. In 41 years of truck stops, you learn to spot the ones who don't belong. Is this Silas a regular here? Used to be. Haven't seen him since that night. But he wasn't a real trucker, I don't think. His hands were too clean, no calluses. And his truck? She paused, thinking. His truck was too perfect. Older model, but pristine, like it was restored rather than maintained. I thanked Ruth and bought a cup of coffee. Sat in my truck thinking. A fake trucker asking about medical shipments, hijackings that followed a pattern, drivers who ended up dead or with convenient memory loss. This wasn't just theft. This was organized, planned, professional. I called Sophronia again. Sophie, I need you to do me a favor. Check if there have been any unusual patterns in medical equipment shipments lately. Delays, route changes, anything. Phineas, what are you getting yourself into? Maybe nothing, maybe something. Just check, please. She sighed. Fine, but you be careful. This sounds like the kind of trouble that gets drivers hurt. While I waited for her to get back to me, I drove to the location where the second hijacking had occurred. Another truck stop, this one larger, part of a major chain. The security manager there was more helpful. They'd caught the whole thing on camera. Want to see something weird? He asked, pulling up the footage on his computer. The timestamp showed 3:47 a.m. A truck pulling a trailer entered the frame, parking in a remote corner of the lot. The driver got out, walked normally to his truck's rear, then suddenly stopped. He stood there for about 30 seconds, completely still, then walked back to his cab and opened the door. Another figure appeared from the shadows, tall, thin, wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap pulled low. Watch this part, the security manager said. The two figures appeared to have a conversation, though there was no audio. Then the driver reached into his cab and pulled out what looked like his CB radio, handed it to the stranger. The stranger did something to it. The video wasn't clear enough to see what, then handed it back. The driver got in his cab, and the stranger walked to the trailer, did something at the connection point, and then the video glitched. Electromagnetic interference, the security manager explained. Something scrambled our cameras for about 3 minutes. When they came back online, the screen cleared. The truck was still there, door open, but the trailer was gone. So we're both men. How is that possible? You can't move a loaded trailer that fast. You can if you have another truck waiting just outside camera range. They knew exactly where our blind spots were. This was definitely organized, but something bothered me about what I'd seen. Can you play that part again, where the driver hands over the CB? He rewound the footage. I watched carefully. The driver's movements were strange, mechanical, like he was sleepwalking. Did this driver ever turn up? Yeah, 3 days later. Found him at a rest area. No memory of anything after pulling into our lot. Doctors said it might be trauma-induced amnesia. Or drug-induced. I'd heard of criminals using drugs to make people compliant, to make them forget. But this was sophisticated, targeted, professional. I thanked the security manager and headed back to my truck. My phone rang. Sophronia. Phineas, you're not going to believe this. I've been digging into medical equipment shipments like you asked. In the past 6 months, there have been 17 shipments of high-value diagnostic equipment that have either gone missing or been significantly delayed. All were single-truck operations or small companies. All the drivers reported memory problems afterward. 17? But Morrison said there were only 4 hijackings. That's the thing. The others weren't reported as hijackings. They were listed as logistics errors or equipment failures. The shipments eventually turned up, but always at the wrong destination, always with the valuable parts missing. Sophie, What kind of diagnostic equipment are we talking about? MRI components, CT scanner parts, specific types of imaging sensors. All stuff that's worth a fortune and hard to trace once it's separated from the main unit. Medical equipment that could be parted out and sold. Memory loss that prevented witnesses. Professional thieves who knew exactly which trucks to target and when. This was big, bigger than just a few hijackings. Sophie, I need you to... She cut me off. Phineas, there's something else. William Turner, the driver whose truck you found. He called our dispatch office yesterday. What? When? About 2 hours before you found his truck. He didn't make sense, kept saying someone was following him, that they were in his head. The dispatcher thought he was having a breakdown, told him to pull over and call 911. That's the last anyone heard from him. In his head? What did that mean? Sophie, can you send me the recording of that call? Already sent it to your phone. Phineas, maybe you should let the police handle this. Yeah, maybe. But we both knew I wouldn't. I listened to the recording. Turner's voice was panicked, slurred like he was drunk or drugged. They're in my head. Can't think straight. They want me to stop. God, the lights. The lights are so bright. Have to get away. Have to hide the trailer. They can't have it. Won't let them. Then, static, and the call ended. The lights. He mentioned lights. I thought about the video glitch the security manager had shown me. Electromagnetic interference. What if... I called Morrison, the detective. Detective, this is Phineas, the driver who found Turner's truck. I have some information you need to hear. I told him everything. The pattern Sophronia had found. The security footage. Turner's final call. He listened without interrupting, then was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Phineas, I appreciate your diligence, but you need to stop investigating this. Why? Because you're not the first person to notice these patterns. We've been working with federal agencies on this for months. These aren't just random hijackings. There's an organization involved, one that has resources and reach we're still trying to understand. Federal agencies, FBI, among others. Look, I can't say more, but please, for your own safety, stay away from this. We've already lost 2 drivers who got too curious. Lost. Not died, lost. Detective, is William Turner dead? A pause. We haven't found a body. That wasn't an answer. What about the medical equipment? Where's it going? Mr. Phineas, I've said too much already. Please, just go back to your regular routes and forget about this. He hung up. But I couldn't forget. I'd found that truck, seen those tracks leading into the cornfield. And now I knew there was more to this, something that had federal agencies involved. I should have listened to Detective Morrison, should have gone back to my regular routes, delivered my furniture, collected my paychecks, and minded my own business. But that's never been my way. In 41 years of driving, I'd learned that the road has its own justice, and sometimes you're the only one in position to deliver it. I was sitting in a truck stop near Zanesville, Ohio, going through my notes when my CB crackled to life. It was past midnight, and most drivers were asleep in their bunks, so the airways were quiet. Midwest Thunder, you copy? The voice was unfamiliar, careful. I picked up the handset. This is Midwest Thunder. Heard you've been asking questions about missing trucks. Who's this? Driver, who doesn't want to end up missing too. Meet me at the abandoned way station, mile marker 164, eastbound. 1 hour, come alone. The transmission ended. I sat there for a moment, considering. This could be a trap, could be someone trying to shut me up. But it could also be someone with answers. I fired up my truck and headed out. The abandoned way station was a relic from the 1970s, closed for a decade but still standing. Truckers sometimes used it as an unofficial rest area, but at this hour it would be deserted. Or so I thought. When I pulled in, there were 2 trucks already there. One was a beat-up Freightliner with Kentucky plates. The other made my blood run cold. It was pristine, older model Peterbilt, restored to perfection, just like Ruth had described. Silas. I parked strategically, keeping my exit clear, engine running. A figure emerged from the Freightliner, a younger driver, maybe 30, nervous as a cat in a dog pound. He walked over to my truck, and I rolled down the window. "You're Phineas?" "Yeah, you called me out here." "Name's Marcus. I drive for a small medical supply company. Been doing it for 5 years, never had any trouble until last month." He glanced at the Peterbilt. "That guy, Silas, he approached me at a fuel stop. Said he was recruiting drivers for special runs. High pay, cash only, medical equipment transport. You take the job?" "Almost did. Money was too good, 5 times the normal rate. But something felt wrong. He asked too many questions about my regular routes, which hospitals I delivered to, security procedures. Then he said something that scared me off." "What?" "He said I wouldn't remember the special runs. Said it was part of the security protocol, that they had ways to make sure drivers couldn't reveal routes or customers even if they wanted to. Called it operational amnesia." Operational amnesia. That explained the memory loss. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus shifted nervously. "Because a week after I turned him down, my buddy took a similar job. Not from Silas directly, but same deal. Special medical run, high pay. He left with a full load 10 days ago. His truck was found yesterday, abandoned just like you described. He's in the hospital now, no memory of the past 2 weeks." "Which hospital?" "Columbus General, but here's the thing. The doctors say he has trace amounts of something in his blood. Some kind of experimental drug that affects memory formation. They've never seen it before. A drug that causes memory loss. Professional thieves who knew exactly which trucks to target. This was even worse than I'd thought." "Is Silas still recruiting?" Marcus nodded toward the Peterbilt. "Why don't you ask him yourself? He's been sitting there for an hour, watching us." As if on cue, the door of the Peterbilt opened. The man who stepped out was not what I expected. Tall, yes, but older than I'd imagined. Maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of bearing that suggested military background. He walked over slowly, hands visible, non-threatening but confident. "Mr. Phineas," he said, voice cultured, educated. "I've been hoping to meet you. Silas, I presume." He smiled, among other names. "Marcus, you can go now. You've done your part." Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He practically ran to his truck and peeled out, leaving me alone with Silas in the abandoned way station. "You're the one behind the hijackings," I said. "No, I'm the one trying to stop them." He pulled out a badge. Not FBI, but something else. Department of Transportation, Office of Special Investigations. "We've been tracking this operation for 2 years. DOT investigates hijackings now? When they involve interstate commerce and sophisticated organized crime, yes. May I?" He gestured to my passenger door. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He settled into the passenger seat like he belonged there. "The organization we're tracking isn't just stealing medical equipment," he began. "They're using the trucking industry as cover for something much larger. The medical equipment is almost incidental. It's what they're moving inside that equipment that matters." "What do you mean?" "Have you ever wondered why they only target specific types of diagnostic machines? MRI components, CT scanners, imaging sensors? It's because these machines, when modified, can be used for purposes very different from medical diagnosis. He pulled out a tablet, showed me technical diagrams I didn't understand. I'm a trucker, not an engineer. Simply put, these machines can be weaponized, not as weapons themselves, but as detection and tracking devices. The organization stealing them is selling the modified equipment to foreign buyers. They use our trucking industry to move them because trucks are everywhere, invisible, part of the landscape. And the memory loss? A precaution. They drug the drivers, use them to transport the equipment to modification facilities, then dump them with no memory of where they've been. The perfect witnesses. They can't testify about what they can't remember. Why not just steal the trucks completely? Because abandoned trucks get investigated immediately, but a confused driver with memory loss, that gets written off as medical issues, stress, maybe drugs. By the time anyone realizes it's connected to the missing equipment, the trail is cold. It made a sick kind of sense, but something bothered me. If you're really federal, why the elaborate approach? Why recruit Marcus to get to me? Silas was quiet for a moment. Because we have a problem. The organization has people inside various agencies. Every time we get close, they're warned. Operations are shut down. Evidence disappears. Witnesses have accidents. We needed someone outside the system, someone they wouldn't expect. A regular trucker. Not regular. You found Turner's truck. You noticed patterns others missed. You have 41 years of experience and connections throughout the industry. And most importantly, you're stubborn enough to keep investigating despite being warned off. What happened to William Turner? Silas's expression darkened. We don't know. He was one of ours, a driver who agreed to work undercover, let himself be recruited. His last communication indicated he'd identified the location where they modify the equipment. Then he vanished. The trailer tracks I found, leading into the cornfield, we followed them. They led to an old farm road, then disappeared. Whoever took that trailer knew exactly where the cameras were, where the surveillance ended, where they could move unseen. So you want me to what, exactly? Be bait? I want you to help us find where they're taking the equipment. You know things, Phineas. You know which truck stops are watched, which aren't. You know which drivers talk, which stay quiet. You know the invisible patterns of the road that outsiders like me can only guess at. I thought about William Turner, alone in his truck, drugged and frightened, trying to fight off whatever they'd given him. I thought about Marcus's friend in the hospital, his memory stolen along with his cargo. I thought about 17 shipments diverted, 17 drivers whose lives were disrupted or destroyed. What would I have to do? Keep driving your regular routes, but watch for specific things. Trucks that don't belong, drivers asking the wrong questions, patterns that don't make sense. And if we identify a shipment they might target, we might ask you to shadow it, keep watch. That's it? For now. But Phineas, understand. These people have killed to protect their operation. The driver Morrison mentioned. The one who had a heart attack? It wasn't natural. He was poisoned with something that mimics cardiac arrest. If you do this, you're putting yourself at risk. I'd been at risk the moment I stopped to investigate Turner's truck. Maybe even before that, the moment I started asking questions. I'm in. Silas nodded, pulled out a phone. Not a regular phone, something specialized. This is encrypted, untraceable. My number is the only one programmed. You see something, you call, day or night. He got out of my truck, then turned back. One more thing. Your dispatcher, Sophronia, how well do you know her? Sophie? I've known her 15 years. She's solid. Maybe, but she has access to shipping manifests, routes, schedules. The organization needs inside information to know which trucks to target. Someone in her position would be valuable to them. You're saying Sophie might be involved? I'm saying trust no one completely. Even people we think we know can be compromised. He walked back to his Peterbilt, and I watched him drive away. The encrypted phone sat heavy in my pocket. I'd just agreed to become an informant, a spy in my own industry. After 41 years of straightforward hauling, I was now playing a game I didn't fully understand. I drove back to the truck stop, but couldn't sleep. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and started researching. If diagnostic equipment could be weaponized, there would be traces online. Academic papers, defense contractor reports, something. What I found chilled me. MRI machines, when modified, could be used to detect specific materials through shipping containers. Nuclear materials, chemical weapons, biological agents. CT scanner components could be repurposed for advanced surveillance systems. Imaging sensors from medical equipment were almost identical to those used in military drones. Someone was building detection systems from stolen medical equipment, systems that could see through walls, identify specific substances, track targets with precision, and they were using American truckers to move the pieces. My regular phone rang. Sophronia. "Phineas, where are you? You were supposed to pick up a load 2 hours ago." I'd completely forgotten about my regular run. "Sorry, Sophie. Got delayed. I'll head there now." "Everything okay? You sound different." Did I? Was I already giving myself away? "Just tired. Been a long week." "Well, get some rest after this run. I've got you scheduled light for the next few days." "Thanks, Sophie." "Oh, and Phineas. Be careful out there. I heard about another abandoned truck, this one near Akron. Driver's missing. It's getting dangerous." Another one. That made 5 that I knew about. "Any details?" "Not much. Driver named Coleman, independent operator. Was hauling, guess what? Medical equipment. Diagnostic machines for a hospital in Pittsburgh." "When did this happen?" "Yesterday, but they just found the truck this morning. Phineas, maybe you should stick to furniture for a while. This medical equipment seems cursed." "Or targeted." "Yeah, maybe you're right." I hung up and immediately called Silas on the encrypted phone. "There's been another hijacking. Driver named Coleman, near Akron. We know. We're at the scene now. The truck was abandoned at a rest area, but we found something interesting. The driver left a message." "What kind of message?" "Scratched into the paint inside the sleeper compartment. Just numbers, 40.7128 out to 81.3294. Coordinates. I pulled them up on my GPS. They pointed to a location about 20 miles from where the truck was found, an old industrial complex that had been closed for years." "You thinking what I'm thinking?" I asked. "It's worth checking out, but not officially. If the organization has people inside, they'll know the moment we file for a warrant. Can you get there?" "I'm 3 hours out. But Silas, if Coleman managed to leave coordinates, maybe he fought off whatever they gave him. Maybe he's still alive. That's what we're hoping. But Phineas, don't go alone. These people are dangerous. I'll find backup." I hung up and thought about who I could trust. Then I picked up my CB. Breaker, this is Midwest Thunder. Looking for any drivers near Akron who remember the old code. The old code was something from decades ago, when truckers would band together to help each other against hijackers and thieves. Most modern drivers didn't even know about it, but some of us old-timers remembered. 3 responses came back immediately. "This is Steel Horse, northbound on 77. I remember. Gray Ghost here, eating at the Iron Skillet. I'm in. Roadmaster, just delivered in Canton. What's the play?" I smiled. The Brotherhood still existed, even if it had been dormant for years. "Meet at the pilot off exit 234. We've got a driver in trouble." Within an hour, 4 trucks were gathered at the pilot. The drivers were all veterans. The youngest had been driving for 20 years. I explained the situation, leaving out the federal investigation but telling them about the hijackings, the missing drivers, the coordinates Coleman had left. "So we're going to check out an abandoned industrial complex that might be full of criminals?" asked Gray Ghost, a woman named Patricia who'd been driving longer than me. "That's about it," she grinned. "Been too long since we had a real adventure." "I'm in," the others agreed. We couldn't take our trucks, too conspicuous. But Roadmaster had a pickup in his trailer, something he used for local deliveries. We piled in 5 aging truckers heading toward what might be danger or might be nothing. The industrial complex looked exactly as abandoned as we'd expected. Broken windows, weeds growing through cracked asphalt, rust on every metal surface. But there were tire tracks in the dirt, fresh ones, leading to a warehouse in the back. We parked a distance away, approached on foot. I had my tire iron, the others had various tools that could serve as weapons if needed. We probably looked ridiculous, 5 middle-aged and older truckers trying to be stealthy. But we'd all been in enough tight spots over the years to know how to be careful. The warehouse door was locked, but Gray Ghost had a solution. "Picked up some skills in my younger days," she said, working on the lock with tools I didn't ask about. Within minutes, we were inside. The warehouse should have been empty. Instead, it was full of medical equipment. MRI machines, CT scanners, imaging devices, millions of dollars worth, all tagged with shipping labels from various hijacked loads. "Jesus," Steel Horse whispered. "This is it. This is where they're taking them." But something was wrong. The equipment was here, but there was no sign of modification. No workshop, no tools. This was just storage. Then we heard it. A moan, faint, from somewhere deeper in the warehouse. We found Coleman in a back office, tied to a chair, barely conscious. He was alive but in bad shape, dehydrated, bruised, clearly drugged. Gray Ghost, who'd been a combat medic before becoming a trucker, checked him over. "He needs a hospital now." While Roadmaster called 911, I looked around the office. There were papers on the desk, shipping manifests, but not normal ones. These showed the equipment being moved again, from here to another location. The final destination was coded, but one thing was clear. They were shipping internationally using the port of Cleveland. My encrypted phone buzzed. "Silas, where are you?" "Inside the warehouse. We found Coleman and the equipment." "Get out, now. We've intercepted communications. They know someone's there. You have maybe 5 minutes before—" Headlights flooded through the broken windows. Multiple vehicles, moving fast. "Too late," I said. "Hide. Federal agents are en route, but they're 20 minutes out." 20 minutes. We had 5 truckers, one barely conscious against whoever was coming. "This is what we're going to do," Gray Ghost said, taking charge like the former military she was. "Roadmaster, Steel Horse, get Coleman to the truck. Get him out of here. Phineas, you and I are going to buy time." "How?" She smiled, pulled out her phone. "We're going to do what truckers do best. We're going to call for backup." She hit record on her phone's video, turned it toward the medical equipment. "This is Patricia Morrison, DOT number 3847293, at an abandoned warehouse near Akron, Ohio. We've discovered millions in stolen medical equipment and a kidnapped driver. Armed suspects approaching. Any drivers in the area, we need help, now." She uploaded it to 3 different trucker social media groups, then grabbed a piece of rebar from the floor. "Now we make noise." We didn't have to fight them. We just had to delay them. So we did what we could. Knocked over equipment to block passages, set off the fire alarm we found, created chaos. The men who entered the warehouse were professional, armed, but they weren't expecting resistance from a couple of old truckers. I saw one of them clearly in the emergency lighting. Young, military haircut, moving with tactical precision. These weren't common criminals, these were mercenaries, professionals hired to protect the operation. "Back door," Gray Ghost hissed, pulling me along. We made it outside just as the sound of air horns filled the night. Trucks, dozens of them, were pulling into the complex. The video had worked. Drivers from all over the area were responding, blocking exits, lighting up the warehouse with their high beams. The mercenaries tried to leave but found their vehicles boxed in by 18-wheelers. They were trapped, and sirens were already approaching. Silas arrived with the federal agents, and the arrests were swift and efficient. 12 men captured, including someone Silas identified as a major player in the organization. The medical equipment was recovered, Coleman was rushed to the hospital, and for once, it seemed like the good guys had won. But as I stood there watching them process the scene, Silas pulled me aside. This was just one warehouse. They have others, and now they know we're onto them. So it's not over, not even close. If anything, it's going to get worse. They're going to accelerate their timeline, move everything they can before we can stop them. And Phineas, they're going to know you were involved. I thought about my 41 years on the road, the simple life I'd built, the routine runs that had given me peace in my later years. All of that was gone now. "Let them come," I said. Silas studied me. "You sure about this?" I looked at the trucks surrounding the warehouse, drivers standing by their rigs, ready to help. The Brotherhood of the Road, stronger than any criminal organization. "I've got backup." The news spread through the trucking community like wildfire. Within 24 hours, every driver from Detroit to Pittsburgh knew about the warehouse raid, the recovered equipment, and the truckers who'd made it happen. CB channels were buzzing with the story, and I'd become something of a reluctant celebrity. But fame in the trucking world is different from regular fame. It's respect mixed with concern, admiration tempered with worry about what comes next. I was hauling a load of furniture to Indianapolis, trying to get back to some semblance of normal, when Sophronia called. Her voice was different, strained, worried. "Phineas, we need to talk, in person, not over the phone." "Sophie, what's wrong?" "Just, can you meet me at the old Terminal Diner off Route 37, tonight after you deliver?" The Terminal Diner had been closed for 3 years. Strange place for a meeting. "Why there?" "Please, Phineas, it's important. And come alone." Every instinct I'd developed over 41 years was screaming danger, but this was Sophie. I'd known her for 15 years, trusted her with my routes, my loads, my livelihood. "I'll be there." I made my delivery in Indianapolis, then drove to the Terminal Diner as the sun was setting. The place looked worse than I remembered. Windows boarded up, parking lot cracked and weed-infested. But Sophronia's car was there, parked behind the building. I grabbed my tire iron and the encrypted phone Silas had given me, setting it to record. If something went wrong, at least there'd be evidence. Sophie was sitting in her car, engine running. When she saw me, she got out, and I could see she'd been crying. She looked older, exhausted, frightened. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Sophie, what's going on?" She looked around nervously, then handed me an envelope. "Everything's in there. Routes, schedules, which loads they're planning to hit next. I'm sorry, Phineas. I'm so sorry." My blood went cold. "You're working with them." "Not by choice." The words exploded out of her. "They have my daughter, had. She was studying in Chicago and they took her, said if I didn't provide information, they'd..." She broke down sobbing. I wanted to comfort her, but I kept my distance. Trust no one completely, Silas had said. How long? 6 months. They wanted shipping manifests for medical equipment, driver information, routes. I thought it was just theft, just money. I didn't know about the memory drugs, the weapons, any of it. Not until I saw the news about the warehouse. Where's your daughter now? They released her after the warehouse raid. Told me it was over, that they were shutting down, moving operations overseas. But Phineas, they're not shutting down, they're accelerating. That envelope has their next 3 targets, all happening tomorrow night. 3 hijackings in one night. They were clearing out before the feds could stop them. I opened the envelope. 3 different medical shipments, 3 different routes, all high-value diagnostic equipment. But what caught my attention was the drivers' names. All independents, all single truck operations, all vulnerable. Sophie, why are you telling me this now? Because I can't live with it anymore, and because, she hesitated, because they're planning something special for you. You disrupted their operation, cost them millions. They want payback. What kind of payback? There's a load coming up, furniture manufacturer in Fort Wayne shipping to Cleveland. They're going to make sure you get that run, but the trailer won't have furniture in it. What will it have? I don't know, but I heard them talking. They said it would be poetic justice, that you'd deliver your own death warrant without knowing it. A trap. They were setting me up for something. Sophie, you need to go to the police. She shook her head. I'm leaving tonight, getting as far away as possible. My daughter's already on a plane to stay with family in Germany. I needed you to know, needed to warn you. She got back in her car, then rolled down the window. For what it's worth, you were the best driver I ever worked with. And the most stubborn. Don't let that stubbornness get you killed. She drove away, leaving me standing in the empty parking lot with an envelope full of criminal intelligence and a warning about my own impending doom. I called Silas immediately. 3 hijackings planned for tomorrow night, I said without preamble. And they're setting a trap for me. Where are you? Terminal Diner off Route 37. My dispatcher just confessed to being their inside source. She's running. We need to intercept her. No, she was coerced. They had her daughter, and she came forward voluntarily. Phineas, we can't just let... She gave us what we need. 3 targets, all the details. We can stop them. There was silence on the line, then... Send me photos of everything she gave you. We'll coordinate interception. But Phineas, if they're targeting you specifically, you need protection. I need to spring their trap. That's insane. No, it's logical. They're expecting me to take that Fort Wayne to Cleveland run. If I don't, they'll know we're on to them. But if I do take it, we can control the situation. You want to deliberately walk into a trap. I want to turn their trap against them. Look, they think I'm just a trucker. They don't know I'm working with you. We can use that. Silas was quiet for a moment. What do you have in mind? First, we save those 3 drivers tomorrow night. Then, I take the Fort Wayne run, but with backup. Lots of backup. I spent the next morning coordinating with Silas and his team. They would shadow the 3 targeted shipments ready to intervene when the hijackers struck. But I had my own preparations to make. I called Grey Ghost. Patricia, I need a favor. After the warehouse adventure, anything. I need drivers, reliable ones. Tomorrow night, I'm hauling from Fort Wayne to Cleveland, and I'm expecting trouble. How much trouble? The kind that involves the people from the warehouse. She was quiet for a moment. How many drivers do you need? How many can you get? Give me 6 hours. While Patricia worked her network, I went to pick up my regular load, the one that would take me to Fort Wayne, putting me in position for the trap. It was furniture like always, but knowing what was coming made every mile feel different. My regular phone rang, a dispatcher from the Fort Wayne manufacturer. "Mr. Phineas, we have a special request. High priority load to Cleveland tomorrow night. Triple rate if you can take it." There it was. The bait. "What's the load?" "Medical equipment. Hospital beds and monitoring systems. Very expensive, very urgent." Medical equipment, of course. "I'll take it." "Excellent. Pickup is at 8 p.m. sharp. Don't be late." I wouldn't be. That night, 3 federal operations went down simultaneously. Thanks to Sophronia's information, agents were in position when the hijackers struck. 2 were stopped cold, the criminals arrested, the drivers saved. But the 3rd went wrong. The hijackers had a backup plan. When they realized it was a trap, they took the driver hostage, used him as a shield to escape. His name was Peterson, an owner-operator from Michigan with 30 years on the road. The hijackers had him, and they wanted to trade. Silas called me at 3 a.m. "They want you," he said. "They'll release Peterson if you deliver the Fort Wayne load as planned. No federal involvement, no backup. They know I'm working with you?" They figured it out when we intercepted the other 2 hijackings. Someone leaked, not Sophronia, someone else. Another mole. The organization had roots everywhere. If I do this alone, they'll kill me. Probably, but if you don't, they'll kill Peterson. A driver's life for a driver's life. The kind of cruel choice these people specialized in. There has to be another way. I'm open to suggestions. I thought about Peterson, about his 30 years on the road, about the family he probably had waiting at home. Then I thought about the conversation I'd had with Gray Ghost. What if I'm not alone, but they think I am? Explain. Truckers have been convoying since the beginning. We know how to move together, how to protect each other. What if I have backup they can't see? They'll be watching for federal agents. But will they be watching for truckers? Regular truckers just happening to be on the same route at the same time? Silas was quiet, thinking. It could work, but these aren't federal agents, Phineas. They're civilians. If something goes wrong, these are truckers who've been dealing with hijackers and thieves for decades. They know the risks. "How many can you get?" I called Patricia back. "How many drivers did you find?" 47. 47? Word spread. A lot of drivers remember Peterson from back in the day. Good man, helped a lot of rookies get started. They want to help. 47 trucks. It would be the largest unofficial convoy in years. The plan was simple but risky. I would pick up the load in Fort Wayne as scheduled. The other drivers would be spread out along the route to Cleveland, looking like normal traffic. But they'd all be monitoring Channel 19, ready to converge if needed. The pickup at Fort Wayne went smoothly. Too smoothly. The warehouse workers loaded a sealed trailer, paperwork all in order. The weight felt right for medical equipment, but I knew there was something else in there. Something they wanted me to deliver. I pulled out onto I-69, heading north toward I-80. It was 8:47 p.m., full dark, light traffic. Perfect conditions for a hijacking. The first sign of trouble came at mile marker 142. A car pulled alongside, matching my speed. I could see the passenger looking up at me, cell phone in hand. Spotters confirming I was en route. "Midwest Thunder to convoy," I said into the CB. "Spotter vehicle, white sedan, marker 142. Gray Ghost copies. I'm 10 miles ahead. Steel Horse, 15 miles back. Roadmaster, parallel on US 6. They were all out there, invisible in the darkness, but ready. The attack came at the way station near the Indiana-Ohio border. It had been closed for maintenance, or so the sign said. But as I approached, portable lights blazed to life, and vehicles blocked both the highway and the shoulders. I had no choice but to pull in. 6 men, all armed, all professional. The leader was the same one I'd seen at the warehouse. Military bearing, tactical gear, no nonsense. "Mr. Phineas," he said, as I rolled down my window, "please step out of the vehicle." "Where's Peterson?" "Safe. He'll be released once you complete your delivery." "How do I know he's alive?" The man held up a phone, showed me a video. Peterson, tied up but apparently unharmed, timestamp from an hour ago. "Now, step out. We need to have a conversation." I climbed down, aware of the guns pointed at me. The leader walked me to the back of the trailer. "Do you know what you're hauling?" "Medical equipment, according to the paperwork." He smiled. "Open it." I broke the seal, opened the doors. The trailer was full of medical equipment as promised, but in the center was something else. A large metal container, locked and sealed. "That container holds something very special," the leader said. "You're going to deliver it to Cleveland as planned. You're going to drop the trailer at the designated location, and then you're going to forget this ever happened. Or Peterson dies, and then we come for everyone you care about. Your dispatcher who betrayed us, yes, we know about Sophronia. Your federal friend Silas, every trucker who helped you at the warehouse." He handed me a phone. "This stays with you. We'll be tracking it, listening. Any deviation from the route, any communication with anyone, and Peterson dies. And after I deliver, you go back to hauling furniture. We disappear. Everyone lives." It was a lie, of course. They'd kill Peterson, kill me, kill anyone who could identify them. But I nodded, took the phone, and got back in my truck. As I pulled out of the way station, I noticed they were following. 2 cars, keeping pace. They thought they had me isolated, controlled. They didn't know about the 47 trucks converging on my location. I picked up my CB, switched to channel 19. The phone they'd given me would monitor cell calls, maybe even standard radio, but CB radio was analog, old technology they might not think to check. Breaker," I said. "This is Midwest Thunder. The package is loaded, and I've got unwanted company, 2 escort vehicles, armed personnel. They have Peterson." The response was immediate. "Gray Ghost copies. I'm at the rest area ahead. I can see you coming. Steel Horse coming up behind. I see the escorts. This is Big Mac. Wasn't part of the original convoy but heard the call. I'm southbound on the other side. Want me to turn around?" More voices joined in. Trucks all over the highway, all converging. "Listen up," I said. "They're monitoring electronic communications but probably not CB. Here's what we're going to do." The plan formed as I drove. We couldn't just ram the escort vehicles with done. They'd kill Peterson. But we could control the environment, make it impossible for them to complete their plan. The first step came at the Route 24 interchange. Construction had traffic down to 1 lane, creating a natural bottleneck. 3 trucks, accidentally, ended up in a minor fender bender right at the merge, blocking everything. The escort vehicles were trapped behind the congestion, separated from me by dozens of vehicles. I heard them on their phone, panic creeping in. "Clear the road, now!" But you can't clear a highway blocked by 3 18-wheelers having an insurance dispute. The drivers were taking their time, exchanging information, calling their companies. All perfectly normal, all completely blocking traffic. I gained 10 miles on the escorts before they managed to get through. But by then, the second phase was in motion. Every truck stop between me and Cleveland suddenly had trucks pulling in and out, creating traffic, slowing everything down. The escort vehicles had to fight through constant congestion, never realizing it was orchestrated. But the real trap was waiting in Cleveland. The delivery location was an industrial area near the port, isolated and perfect for their purposes, or it would have been if 40 trucks hadn't arrived there first, filling every available space, blocking every exit. I pulled in as directed, surrounded by my fellow truckers. The escorts arrived minutes later to find themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The leader got out, gun drawn, but clearly understanding the situation was not what he'd planned. "You think you're clever," he said to me. "I think I'm a trucker," I replied. "And truckers stick together." He raised his gun toward me, but before he could fire, air horns erupted from every truck. The sound was deafening, disorienting. Lights blazed from every direction, blinding. In the chaos, federal agents who'd been hidden in some of the trucks emerged, weapons drawn. "Federal agents, drop your weapons!" The leader tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Every exit was blocked by 18-wheelers. Within minutes, it was over. The hijackers were in custody, the mysterious container secured by federal agents. But Peterson was still missing. "Where is he?" I demanded, getting in the leader's face as agents cuffed him. He smiled coldly. "Dead by now, probably. My people had orders." His words were cut off by a CB transmission. "Breaker, breaker. This is Wandering Wolf. Found a guy tied up in an abandoned truck near Findlay. Says his name is Peterson. Needs medical, but seems okay." Relief flooded through me. They'd found him. Silas appeared at my elbow. "You did it, Phineas. We did it, all of us." He nodded toward the container. "Want to know what you were hauling?" "Do I?" "Advanced surveillance equipment stolen from a defense contractor. Modified medical machines combined with military hardware. Worth about $50 million on the black market." $50 million. No wonder they'd been willing to kill for it. "Is it over?" "This cell is done, but the organization..." He shrugged. "They're like weeds. Cut one down, another grows. Then we keep cutting." He smiled. "You want to keep working with us?" I looked around at the trucks, at the drivers standing together, proud of what they'd accomplished. "We all do. You've got yourself a network, Silas. 47 trucks today, but there are thousands of us out here. We see everything, go everywhere, use us." He pulled out a card. "Official consulting position. Real pay, real protection. Interested? Do I get to keep hauling? Wouldn't have it any other way." I took the card. After 41 years of straight trucking, I was now officially part of something bigger. But I was still a trucker first. Always would be. Peterson's recovery took 3 weeks. I visited him at the hospital in Toledo, bringing coffee from a truck stop because hospital coffee isn't fit for truckers. He looked older than his 62 years, the ordeal having taken its toll, but his eyes were still sharp. "Heard you organized quite the convoy," he said, voice raspy from whatever drugs they'd given him. "Wasn't just me. 47 drivers showed up. Would have been more if we'd had time." He nodded slowly. "They kept me in a shipping container, moved me 3 times. I tried to keep track of where, but the drugs..." He trailed off, frustrated. "Don't worry about it. You're alive. That's what matters. Phineas, I heard things while I was captive. They thought I was unconscious, but the drugs were wearing off. This isn't over." I leaned closer. "What did you hear?" "They mentioned something called the Northern Route. Said even if the Cleveland operation failed, the Northern Route was still active. Through Michigan into Canada." Canada. International borders meant federal jurisdiction got complicated. "Did they say what they're moving?" "Not medical equipment. Something about special cargo from overseas, coming through the ports, then trucked across the border. They said it was worth more than everything else combined." I called Silas as soon as I left the hospital. "Northern route through Michigan into Canada," I said without preamble. Peterson heard them talking about it. "We've been monitoring border crossings, but there are hundreds of trucks every day, without specifics. Then we get specific. Let me work my network." Over the next few days, I reached out to every driver I knew who ran routes into Canada. The border-crossing truckers were a tight community. They dealt with customs, regulations, and delays that domestic drivers never faced. If something unusual was happening, they'd know. The first break came from a driver named Quebec Pete, despite being from Minnesota. He'd noticed a pattern at the Ambassador Bridge crossing in Detroit. "There's this company, Northern Logistics Solutions," he told me over coffee at a truck stop near Port Huron. "They run the same route every week, same time, same trucks. But here's the weird part. Their trucks are always overweight according to the scales, but their paperwork shows light loads. How do they get through? That's just it. There's always a specific customs officer on duty when they cross. Guy named Harrison. Been there for years, but suddenly he's only working shifts that coincide with these trucks. A customs officer on the take. That's how they were getting across. Pete, can you get me specifics? Truck numbers, exact times, anything?" "Already got them." He pulled out a notebook, pages filled with observations. "Been tracking them for 2 weeks ever since you asked about unusual patterns." I studied his notes. 3 trucks, always traveling together, crossing every Thursday at 2 a.m. Same DOT numbers, same drivers, same customs officer. It was too perfect, too routine. "Pete, what do you know about Northern Logistics Solutions? On paper, they're legit. Hauling auto parts from suppliers in Detroit to manufacturers in Ontario. But I've been driving for 38 years, and something's off. Auto parts don't require refrigerated trailers, but theirs are always running cooling units." Refrigerated trailers for auto parts. That made no sense unless they're hauling something that needs temperature control. That's what I figure. But what? I thought about what Peterson had heard. Special cargo from overseas worth more than medical equipment. Something that needed refrigeration. Pharmaceuticals, I said suddenly. They're smuggling drugs, not street drugs. Prescription medications, the kind that cost thousands per dose here but are made cheap overseas. Pete nodded slowly. That would explain the weight discrepancy. Pills don't weigh much, but the refrigeration units and hidden compartments would. "When's their next run?" "Tomorrow night, Thursday, 2 a.m. 24 hours to set up surveillance on an international border crossing. This was going to be complicated. I called Silas, explained what we'd found. He was skeptical. "We can't just stop trucks at the border without cause. International incidents, jurisdiction issues, then we give you cause. Let me and some drivers follow them, document everything. If we can show they're deviating from their stated route, stopping somewhere suspicious, that's probable cause, right? Phineas, these people have already tried to kill you once. And they'll try again if we don't stop them. Look, they think I'm scared off after Cleveland. They won't expect me to be in Michigan." He sighed. "What do you need?" "Backup ready at the border. If we can prove they're smuggling, you grab them when they try to cross. And if you can't prove it, then we follow them into Canada and let the Mounties know." It wasn't much of a plan, but it was what we had. I put out the call again, this time specifically for drivers with experience running to Canada. Within hours I had 12 volunteers, all with valid paperwork to cross the border if needed. Grey Ghost was one of them. "Wouldn't miss it," she said. "Besides, I've got family in Windsor. Good excuse to visit." We met at a truck stop in Monroe, Michigan, about 60 miles from Detroit. I laid out the plan. Follow the 3 trucks from their point of origin. Document any stops or transfers, and be ready to pursue across the border if necessary. "What are we looking for?" asked a driver named Wolverine, despite being from Ohio. "Anything unusual, stops at places that aren't on their manifest, meetings with other vehicles, transfers of cargo. These guys are smart, so it'll be subtle. And if they make us, we scatter." No heroics. Peterson already paid that price. At 11 p.m., we took positions around Detroit, spread out enough to not be obvious but close enough to converge quickly. I was parked at a rest area on I-75 watching traffic when Quebec Pete's voice crackled over the CB. Northern Logistics trucks just left their depot, northbound on 75. Copy that. Everyone stay loose. I pulled out behind them with a 5-minute gap, just another trucker heading north. The 3 trucks moved in formation, maintaining exact spacing, professional. In my mirrors, I could see other trucks from our group joining the flow of traffic. They took the expected route until they reached exit 47. Then, without signaling, all 3 trucks exited. This wasn't on their manifest. They were supposed to go straight to the border. Deviation at exit 47, I called out. 2 units follow, rest, continue to border. Gray Ghost and Wolverine followed me off the exit, while the others continued north. The 3 trucks turned into an industrial area, then pulled into a warehouse complex surrounded by security fencing. We parked at a closed gas station with a view of the entrance. Through binoculars, I watched as the trucks backed up to loading docks. Men emerged from the warehouse moving quickly, efficiently. They were transferring something from the warehouse to the trucks, but the angle made it impossible to see what. "Need a closer look," I said. "Too dangerous," Gray Ghost warned. But Wolverine was already out of his truck. "I've got this. Used to do reconnaissance in Iraq. Still remember how to sneak." Before we could stop him, he was gone, moving through the shadows towards the fence. We watched, tense, as he found a spot where he could see the loading. 10 minutes later, he was back, breathing hard. They're loading sealed medical containers, the kind used for organ transport, but dozens of them. And Phineas, there were people in that warehouse, patients maybe, hooked up to IVs, barely conscious. Organs. They were trafficking organs. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just smuggling, this was harvesting and selling human organs. The refrigerated trucks, the medical connections, the value Peterson had mentioned. It all made sick sense. I called Silas immediately. "It's organs. They're trafficking human organs." "What? Are you sure?" Wolverine saw medical transport containers and patients. They're loading right now, heading for the border in maybe an hour. This changes everything. Organ trafficking is FBI, DEA, everyone. I need to make calls. They'll be at the border in an hour. I know. Stall them if you can. Stall 3 trucks full of armed criminals transporting human organs. Sure, no problem. The trucks pulled out of the warehouse, heading back toward I-75. We followed, but now with a desperate urgency. Those organs had come from somewhere. Maybe willing sellers, maybe not. And they were going somewhere. Black market transplants for people who couldn't wait for legitimate organs. I had an idea. Crazy, dangerous, but maybe our only shot. All units converge on I-75 northbound at mile marker 31. We're going to create a situation. "What kind of situation?" Gray Ghost asked. "The kind that makes them unable to reach the border on time. Organs have a shelf life. If they can't deliver on schedule, the whole operation falls apart." We had 9 trucks converging on a 3-mile stretch of highway. The Northern Logistics trucks were running at exactly 65 mph, maintaining perfect spacing. Professional, careful, unaware of what was about to happen. It started with Big Mac having engine trouble in the right lane, forcing traffic to merge left. Then Roadmaster developed transmission issues in the center lane. Within minutes, we had created a rolling roadblock, all 3 lanes moving at 35 mph. The Northern Logistics trucks tried to pass, but every time they moved, another of our trucks would have problems. Overheating, tire issues, mysterious smoke that required immediate slowdown. I watched them in my mirrors, saw them getting agitated. They were on a timeline, and we were destroying it. One of them tried to use the shoulder, but Quebec Pete was ready. His trailer accidentally swung wide, blocking it completely. "Sorry," he called out cheerfully. "Steering problem." For 45 minutes, we kept them trapped in the slowest-moving convoy in Michigan history. Other civilian traffic was getting angry, horns blaring, but we held formation. Every minute that passed was a minute closer to those organs being unusable. Finally, they'd had enough. The lead Northern Logistics truck forced its way onto the shoulder, scraping against the barrier, determined to break free. The other two followed. "Let them go," I said, "but keep following." They raced toward the border, but it was too late. As they approached the Ambassador Bridge, federal agents were waiting. Not just a few, dozens of them, plus local police, customs enforcement. Everyone Silas had been able to mobilize. The Northern Logistics trucks tried to turn around, but we were behind them, blocking retreat. They were trapped on the bridge approach, nowhere to go. The takedown was swift and professional. The drivers surrendered without a fight, hired help, not the real criminals. But the cargo was there, just as Wolverine had described. 43 organ transport containers, each worth hundreds of thousands on the black market. But that wasn't the worst part. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of the operation. The organization hadn't just been stealing medical equipment, they'd been using it to create illegal transplant facilities. The confused, drugged drivers weren't just robbery victims. They'd been typed for organ compatibility. The ones who matched certain profiles were kept longer, some waking up with surgical scars they couldn't explain. William Turner, the driver whose abandoned truck I'd found, was discovered in one of these facilities, alive but missing a kidney. He'd been held for weeks, used as an unwilling donor, then dumped with no memory of what happened. The trials took 2 years, 137 arrests across 6 states and 2 countries. The organization's reach was vast. Doctors, customs officials, trucking company owners, even hospital administrators who looked the other way when organs appeared with questionable documentation. Harrison, the corrupt customs officer, flipped on his superiors in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony revealed routes through multiple border crossings, a network that had been operating for over a decade. But the real heroes were the truckers, 47 at the Cleveland warehouse, 12 at the border, countless others who'd reported suspicious activity once they knew what to look for. The FBI officially recognized our contribution, though most drivers didn't care about recognition. We'd done what needed doing. Peterson recovered fully, minus 1 kidney he didn't remember losing. He retired after that, said 40 years on the road was enough. But he still comes to the truck stops, still talks to drivers, warning them about things that seem too good to be true. Sophronia never surfaced again. I hope she found peace somewhere, her and her daughter. She'd been a victim too, forced to choose between her child and her conscience. I don't judge her for the choice she made. Quebec Pete became something of a legend among border-crossing truckers. His detailed notes had broken the case wide open. The FBI hired him as a consultant, teaching agents what to look for at border crossings. Gray Ghost, Wolverine, Roadmaster, and the others formed an informal network, watching for patterns, reporting suspicious activity. We called ourselves the Highway Watch, and while it was never official, federal agents knew they could count on us. As for me, I kept hauling. Furniture mostly, though now every load felt different, knowing what could be hidden in any trailer. Silas kept in touch, occasionally asking me to take specific routes, watch certain trucks, be in particular places at particular times. I was at a truck stop near Fort Wayne, the same one where this all started, when a young driver approached me. Fresh-faced, maybe 25, excited about his new career. You're Phineas, aren't you? Midwest Thunder? I nodded. I heard about what you did. The warehouse, the border, all of it. Is it true? Parts of it. How did you know? How did you spot what everyone else missed? I thought about it. About 41 years of watching patterns, noticing discrepancies, trusting instincts. The road teaches you if you pay attention. Every mile has a lesson, every stop has a story. Most are boring, routine, but sometimes you see something that doesn't fit. A truck where it shouldn't be, a driver acting wrong, cargo that doesn't make sense. And then what? Then you have a choice. Look away, mind your business, stay safe. Or look closer, ask questions, maybe save lives. He nodded eagerly. I want to help, want to be part of the highway watch. I studied him, eager, naive, but sincere. First, learn to drive. Really drive, not just move the truck. Learn the roads, the patterns, the rhythm of the industry. Learn which truck stops are safe, which aren't. Learn to read other drivers. Know who belongs and who doesn't. How long does that take? I've been at it 41 years and I'm still learning. He looked disappointed, so I added, but you can start watching now. Keep your eyes open. Trust your instincts. And if you see something that doesn't feel right, tell someone. Could be nothing. Could be everything. He thanked me and headed back to his truck, walking with a new purpose. Another set of eyes on the road, another driver who might spot what others miss. My phone buzzed. Silas. Got something you might be interested in. Shipment of medical equipment, Chicago to Detroit. All legitimate, but the FBI wants eyes on it just in case. When? Tomorrow night. I'll take it. Because that's what I do now. Haul freight like always, but also watch, protect, investigate when needed. After 41 years of simple trucking, I'd become something more. Part driver, part guardian, part of a network that stretches across every highway in America. The organization we'd fought was broken, but others would take its place. They always do. The interstates are arteries carrying the lifeblood of commerce, and there will always be parasites trying to feed off that flow. But now they know we're watching. Every truck stop, every way station, every mile of highway has drivers who know what to look for. I pulled out of Fort Wayne as the sun set, heading for Chicago. The road stretched ahead, familiar yet always changing. In my mirrors, I could see other trucks, other drivers, each with their own loads, their own destinations. But we were connected now, part of something larger. The CB crackled to life. Breaker, breaker, this is Steel Horse. Midwest Thunder, you out there? 10-4, Steel Horse, rolling westbound. Got a driver here, says he saw something suspicious at the rest area near mile marker 89. 3 trucks, all identical, all with refrigeration units running but manifested as dry goods. Here we go again. I'm 20 minutes out. Tell him to document everything but stay safe. Copy that. Highway Watch is on it. Highway Watch. It had started as a joke, a name Grey Ghost came up with over coffee. But it had become real, a network of thousands of drivers, all watching, all protecting the roads we called home. My phone rang. Peterson. Phineas, you see the news? They just arrested 6 more people connected to the organ ring. Doctors in Cleveland who were buying the organs. Good. Hope they rot. Yeah. Hey, I wanted to thank you again for everything. You'd have done the same. Maybe, but you did it. You saw that abandoned truck and stopped. Most would have kept driving. Couldn't leave it alone. Never been good at minding my own business. He laughed. Thank God for that. We talked for a few more minutes, then I signed off. The suspicious trucks Steel Horse had mentioned were coming up. Time to go to work. As I approached mile marker 89, I saw them. 3 identical white trucks, unmarked, refrigeration units humming. Could be legitimate. Probably were. But maybe not. I took photos, noted the DOT numbers, documented everything. Then I called it into Silas just to be safe. He'd run the numbers, check the manifests, verify everything was legal. 9 times out of 10, it was nothing. But that 10th time could be another organ ring, another theft operation, another conspiracy that threatened innocent drivers and their cargo. The white trucks took the next exit, heading toward a distribution center I knew was legitimate. Just regular trucks after all. But I'd keep watching, keep checking, keep protecting the roads, because that's what truckers do. We haul the loads that keep America running. We drive through nights and storms and traffic that would break most people. We spend weeks away from home, living in spaces smaller than most bathrooms, all to make sure stores have stock and hospitals have supplies, but we also watch out for each other. We protect the innocent. We stop the criminals who try to use our industry for evil. We are the thin line of chrome and steel that keeps the highways safe. My CB crackled again. Another driver, another suspicious sighting, another possible threat to investigate. I smiled, pushed harder on the accelerator. After 41 years, I'd finally found my true calling. Not just hauling freight, but protecting those who haul it. The road stretched on into the darkness, and I followed it gladly. There would always be another load to deliver, another mile to drive, another threat to stop. And I'd be there for all of it, along with thousands of other drivers, watching, protecting, keeping the highways safe. Because we are the Highway Watch, and we never stop rolling.